Okay, thank you. We'll move to public comment. Any member of the public may address the Single Family Design Board for up to 2 minutes on any subject within the jurisdiction that is not scheduled for public discussion before the board on today. Is there anybody here for public comment? I don't see anybody, so we'll close public comment and move to approval of the minutes for the January 18th, 2011 Single Family Design Board. Can I have a motion for approval?
I'll make that motion.
First by Denise, second by Aaron. So going through the minutes, is there any additions or edits to the minutes? We'll start with item 1. And just call out if you have any comments. Item 2.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Aaron.
Under the motion, number 2, applicant is encouraged to consult with I would like to say required.
I kind of had made an edit on that line as well.
Yeah.
I don't know if we can actually require it, but I think we could say
encourage.
strongly encourage. So I think that's a reasonable edit. Paul, you kind of look like you were going to say anything on that? Okay. Item 2, any more additions or edits? Item number 3. And this one I wanted to kind of have a discussion on the fourth item on the motion where it says study reduction of the turf, and see if that's a strong enough language as well. If the board is actually going to be looking for reduction or just to have them give their comments or study the reduction.
Chair, during the item, I did ask the question, are we looking for a reduction in turf, or are we looking for a reduction along the front edge? And it came back as along the front edge was what people were looking for, to save the bluff. That was the purpose.
The front edge meaning the bluff.
The bluff edge versus making a concrete patio larger or something of that nature.
So regarding what's spelled out in the motion, do you feel this is not, the study is not necessarily, we need to remove turf from that area?
Well, it says and along the bluff edge to reduce irrigation needs. So provide, that's a better word.
Okay, instead of study, we'll change it to provide.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments on item 3? Move to item 4. Any comments? Okay. So we'll go to item 5. And we'll go to item 6. I was not present for this. I'll have to abstain, so you might have to fill me in. Okay. So we'll go to item 7. Any comments? Okay. So those are the edits. Any more discussion about the minutes? We'll take a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstain? I'll abstain from item number 6. Jim, you might have to abstain from whatever item you were on. Yeah. Okay. All right. So those are the minutes. So we'll move to the consent calendar for January 24th, 2011. Michelle, would you go through the calendar?
Yes, the consent agenda for Monday, January 24th, 2011. Item A, 533 Conejo Road, was continued indefinitely. The staff hearing officer to return to consent. Item B, 2323 Red Rose Way, granted project design approval with NPO and continued indefinitely to consent. Item C, 3831 Lacumba Hills Lane, continued 1 week to consent with comments. Items were reviewed by Glenn Deisler, Jim Zimmerman, and Aaron Carroll, with Aaron Carroll stepping down from item B.
2, right. Okay. Any discussion on those items? Any edits to the minutes? All those in favor, let's get a motion for approval of the calendar. Paul? And a second by Denise? Okay. And all those in favor of the motion? Aye. Opposed? Bernie abstains. Okay. So the motion carries. We'll move on to January 31st, 2011 consent calendar.
For today, January 31st, 2011, item A, 1229 Cayuga Alto. Sorry, turned off my mic. Item A, 1229 Cayuga Alto, granted positive comments and continued indefinitely to staff hearing officer. Item B, 282 Loma Media Road, was granted approval as submitted of the review after final. Item C, 3831 Lacumba Hills Lane, was granted project design approval with NPO and final approval as submitted. Item D, 128 San Rafael Avenue, granted project design approval with MPO and final approval with conditions. Item E, 1314 Punta Gorda Street, continued 1 week with comments. Item F, 45 Rubio Road, project design approval with NPO and final approval with conditions. And item G, 331 Sherman Road, was continued 1 week with comments. And items were reviewed by Paul Zink and Aaron Carroll.
All right, thank you. May I get a motion to approve the calendar for January 31st? Paul, and then Aaron second. Any discussion of those items? Okay, motion to approve the calendar as discussed. Say aye. Aye. All the opposed? Abstain? So the motion carries unanimously. We'll move to announcements, if there are any announcements by staff.
No announcements.
Okay. And subcommittee reports. I don't believe we have any subcommittees at this time, so we can move to the item 1 on the agenda, which is 1607 Shoreline Drive. Let's see now. This is a revised project, proposals for the additions and alterations to an existing 3,034 square foot, 2-story single-family residence, including an attached 533 square foot, 2-car garage. The project involves the demolition of 279 square feet of existing floor area and 2 existing decks totaling 431 square feet and construction of 344 square foot first floor addition and a new 531 square foot roof deck. Also, the proposed is to remodel 2,455 square foot of interior floor area, an exterior stairwell, rooftop fireplace and pergola, approval of an as-built brick fountain in the backyard, alterations to the landscape plan, and alterations to an existing stucco wall on the front property line to not exceed 42 inches in height. The proposed total of 3,985 square feet on a 20,066 square foot lot is 85% of the maximum guideline floor to lot area ratio. This is the third concept review, and I think we should have some minutes. So Denise, if you could read those.
Says here, comments only. Project requires environmental assessment and planning commission review of a coastal development permit. Let's see, we have,
Did you hear that?
let me repeat that. This is the third concept review, comments only. Project requires environmental assessment and planning commission review of a coastal development permit. Our last minutes. Number 1, study simplifying the complexity of the architecture to include the following. Study reducing the scale of the ocean-facing doors and trellis. Study eliminating the spiral staircase connection between the roof deck and the lower deck. The applicant is encouraged to continue to scale down or reduce the square footage of the roof deck to less than 700 square feet. Applicant is encouraged to consult with a civil engineer or landscape architect to show compliance with Tier 3 stormwater management program requirements and best management practices.
Okay, thank you. Can I have your name for the record?
Yeah, I'm James Zimmerman, architect for Mr. and Mrs. Chad Walker and family.
Okay, and your presentation?
On the front elevation, Glenn was questioning about the mass of the garage. Where is it? So what I did was I scaled this down so that this didn't look so heavy. Before, this was a lot thicker. Put a 7-foot garage door in. I had shown 8. Changed the design of the garage doors. And I actually brought this down further so it wasn't sticking up so far.
Okay.
The rear elevation, I'd like to show you a sketch that changes that just a slight bit. I met with the Frickers this morning after seeing that she wasn't happy that she wrote the letter. And the neighbor across the street said she was going to send a letter in.
We'll get to that.
Oh,
We'll
okay.
get to that.
Okay. So what I did was I eliminated the tile roof, which was really heavy, and I brought this wall up at a lower elevation, and then I provided a green roof behind it, so that that's 5 feet deep, and then this is set back 20 feet. So the rear elevation would look something like this, and so basically it's being stepped up away from the property line, and they were happy with that. I don't see them here either, so. What I'd like to do is kind of go with the sculptural shape on the stairs. I know they probably need a little more work, but I think that something kind of neat could be done there, and not expose all the railings and the stairs going up.
Okay.
Another item was, limiting the height or the height of the doors. Originally, the doors went all the way up. I dropped that down about 1.5 feet, and then I put windows above. And then so visually, the stairs looked, the doors looked more to scale.
Okay. You want to go over any changes to the plan to the roof deck?
Yes. Then this is the new green roof. So this wall here is about 13 feet from the property line, and this is another, so we got 20 feet to this point from the property line.
Do you have a roof plan in this set of drawings?
Yes.
Okay.
See, there's one other thing I forgot. I'll think of it. So before, this was the tile roof coming up, and we've cut into that and provided a landscape area here. And then this roof is back 20 feet from the property line.
Jim, can you lay that other plan that
Sure.
you had next to it? I want to see kind of the changes that are occurring here. So this is the same relationship here.
Yes, right.
What's happening with this stair and the wall?
They were concerned about that wall being too high, so I brought that down 4 feet above the landing. Originally, it was up at this height,
Okay.
and it was wrapping around. So now it's 4 feet above the landing.
Where is the door that closes off the space?
Well, you come up a half a level, you open the door.
So this is a full height wall here above that
Yes.
height.
Yeah.
Okay.
Back to elevation.
Yeah. see if we can understand that.
This is the wall that I brought down. Originally, it was up here.
So where's this door? Can you dot in where this door would be?
It
You can spin it towards
is,
you if you want.
yeah, it's about right here. So you come through the door, and then the stairs go back the other way. You come through the door, and then the stairs go back.
This side, I understand that. Okay. Have you done any work with the landscaping in Tier 3?
Not as yet, no.
Okay. What other changes have occurred since the last meeting?
Well, I reduced the square footage of the roof deck to 533 square feet.
Okay. Do you have any other parts
No.
of your presentation?
No, that's it.
Okay.
I think I mentioned I met with Frickers this morning and reviewed the new drawings, and they're happy with those.
All right, thank you. So I'd like to move to public comment on this project. Is there anybody out in the audience that would like to comment on the project? I don't see one person. So, Michelle?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. We do have two letters. One letter from Kate Meehan at 1600 Shoreline Drive, and she writes that she's in support of the project. She finds that the project is well fit into the neighborhood. And then also a letter from a neighbor at 1607 Shoreline Drive, Grace Dodson and Eric Fricker. And they address several concerns regarding and pointing to the specific points of the single-family design guidelines, specifically regarding size, bulk, and scale, reference to page 18C regarding the size, bulk, and scale issues, good neighbor guidelines and privacy for visual distance and upper-story decks and balconies, and covered elements for second-story decks and covered porches and loggias. So there's a letter for the record there.
All right, thank you. And I believe the board got copies of that last letter that you spoke about. I got it sent to me on Friday.
Yeah.
I think Jim is acknowledging he received the letter too, and
Right.
I think he's met with the writers of that letter maybe today.
This morning.
And these
Yeah.
drawings, or especially these smaller drawings here,
Yes.
represent some modifications to the plan since the Frickers since this set of drawings have been issued to the city.
Right.
So, but I mean, I don't technically have a letter from the Frickers saying that they're okay with that, but I don't see them here either, so we'll take that. Is there no other public comment? I'll close public comment and bring it back to the board for their questions. Yes, Paul?
I got a quick question. Did you also lower the floor-to-floor height, or has it
no.
always been 9 foot on the first floor and 8 foot on the second?
That's right, yeah.
And then the ceiling height that you have in this living room space,
Well, it would be about 16 feet.
16 feet,
It's really important because of the balcony.
which is on the second floor that looks through
Yeah,
or over.
because you would be looking into the wall here if it got any lower when you're walking along here. So the ceiling's all the same height here.
Okay.
Yes, Bernie?
Can you please refresh my memory about what the covered elements, decks are, and where they are, and how many there are?
Yeah, we actually don't have any covered
So,
decks or
so
anything.
uncovered, I know there's the roof deck, and then there's how many other decks besides that?
Well,
one?
there's a balcony here, and there's a little balcony here, but none of them are covered.
I think there's a first floor sort of arcade down here, but it's sort of a porch
It's
element
Yeah, that's
at
more
the
of a,
ground level. Okay. Additional questions?
Can I go back to the elevation?
Yes. Okay. So let's move to comments, please. Yes, Paul.
I've had some difficulty with this project from the beginning, and I haven't really been able to put my hands on it, but it just seems on a verge too large. And the way I look at it and the way I've been studying it, it seems too big for the site, and I'm having a difficult time supporting it. And I've really given a lot of thought. Some of the thing that I'm struggling with the most is the interior volume space here and what it creates, and then that becomes the deck on the upper level. And I just think that the house is being pushed up too high, even though it is 20 feet back. The interesting thing in this elevation, what is being shown here is a nice green space, but then I'd like to go back to the floor plan and see where that stairwell happens on that side, because I have a feeling I'm not following everything that is happening right here with this plane here and how it's in this wall coming up, and we're not seeing that in that elevation. And then something, because the plans have been changed slightly and we don't have them in front of us, which is okay. But there's this window here, which in floor plan, if this wall was brought to this point and then there's a wall here, it changes the architecture at this point. So I have a concern. When this wall comes down, then what we're going to actually see, or what the neighbor will see, is actually stairs going up to the deck. And I don't know if they were even aware of that, if I'm making any sense on that.
Well,
Yeah, that's supposed to be lower.
Yeah, and the window wouldn't necessarily be there, yeah.
No.
So just in general, I'm having a difficulty supporting the design and the amount of things that are happening in the design. There's too many things occurring, and it seems to have grown too tall, and it hasn't grown smaller in height. So,
okay, thank you. Any other comments? Brian, any?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I guess my only comment is, the plate heights, studying lowering the plate heights, somehow heights are tall. That's about my only comment right now.
Okay, thank you. Can we get any comments from any site issues? We have kind of limited information on that right now. Yeah. Yeah.
I do have one more comment. I know Paul is struggling with all the stuff going on. And my looking at it, I kind of like the fun whimsicalness of it. I think I kind of know what Mr. Zimmerman's trying to achieve. It's just the size may be too tall, but otherwise I kind of like the fun whimsicalness of it.
All right. Thank you. Yes, Denise.
Well, as I understand, you have a 9-foot plate height on the first floor and an 8 on the top, right?
Right.
That doesn't seem excessive to me.
I
I mean, I just don't see that as excessive. It seems quite normal to me to have that be that way.
Can I ask for a clarification then? Because if you look on the east elevation, it says 10 and 10. So what is that?
Yeah, there might be a difference in floors.
That's the one bedroom. That's from floor to floor, so it's a 9-foot ceiling here.
Okay.
That's finished floor.
Okay.
this is great.
Yes.
Yeah, let me go to the second floor plan.
Okay.
a
So
second.
that's
So there's a level change right here, so I think this is a slightly higher plate
Right.
height. Okay. Okay.
I appreciate the changes you made. I think that they did make a big difference, especially this piece in the front. That was really heavy-handed, I thought, before. Also like the clear-story windows in the back. It's still quite a lot of glazing, but other than that, this piece is still a little troubling to me too. I'm not quite
Yeah,
sure.
that's down now.
Okay.
That's down.
We were having a hard time. I'll kind of jump into
Yeah.
it. I mean, we're having a little bit of hard time because this was sort of a late minute addition to the design,
Mhm.
and I don't think it's 100% coordinated yet with the height of the door and the roof element. And Paul's already pointed out on this elevation it wouldn't be that way, and there's no window there, and so I think it was rushed right now. not saying that the concept is bad to lower that. It's probably a good concept. But we're not quite sure we understand it totally. Aaron, did you have any more comments before we move on?
I appreciate the reduction in the deck on top. I think he's making the right moves, maybe just not far enough, as a general comment.
Mm-hmm.
The rear elevation seems like the most aggressive to me. The side elevations in the front seem reasonable. I keep wanting to reduce the parapet in the front that connects the two pieces of the second story.
Mm-hmm.
But I think generally making the right moves, just not quite.
Okay. Thank you. I think that. Yes, Bernie.
I may.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. Yes, I think that we do appreciate the architects downsizing it a little bit based on pretty much unanimous comments at our last meeting. And I think we're going to see a better project when this is finally ready, so we really appreciate that. I think that they're pushing the MPO findings and guidelines a little bit still too far. For example, when the MPO guidelines were developed, one controversial thing was roof decks, and there's hardly any roof decks at all. Another one is exterior staircases. We hardly are seeing any exterior there. We have to watch this stuff on the Mesa in particular, and it's very controversial. And the combination of that coupled with the size, the FAR is a little bit misleading still because it's a bluff top lot, so a lot of the area that's being counted really isn't buildable. So I just think that for the neighborhood, in order for this to meet the guidelines, it really needs to be reduced, and some of these elements need to either be eliminated, just simplified and more compatible with the neighborhood. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Bernie. Jim, just a question for you, kind of a continuation on Aaron's comment. This parapet wall here, I guess, is a wall that's blocking the roof deck from the street elevation.
Not really. You won't see the roof deck from the street.
But
This is just enough so that you can frame it and then slope it. That parapet is only a little over a foot high. I brought it down the last time I was in. I brought that down about a foot and a half.
okay.
You don't see the roof deck from the street. This is in the backyard.
The height of the roof, do we have a guardrail situation there for the
No.
roof deck?
Mm.
Okay. So the parapet's only 42 inches above the deck?
No, the parapet is only a foot. What are you talking about?
This parapet right here, is that
Yeah.
not, this is on maybe it's on the flat here. So this
No,
is
see, it slopes down
okay.
that way.
Is there any reason that couldn't be lower?
I could possibly put it a little lower. See, with the new design, when I lowered the square footage, I could slope it this way and try to get it lower.
This is the second story.
The existing roof is up here. You know, we're actually making the roof lower than what it was before.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I could maybe comment. I think maybe all it is the way it's the detail of the plaster stepping up. It's
Yeah.
giving it a lot of attention there. Maybe if that were just less.
Okay.
Let me just simplify that as well as an element. You're saying?
The tile treatment of the garage.
This right here.
Yeah, just that or
So you like that, the tile?
Well, it's just the simplified.
Oh,
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if we can pull that back in. I actually prefer this to this. It's like there's a lack of continuity here that bothers me. When it looks like two different houses, this does. So I'm actually more of a fan of keeping the tile on that side. And then if you did this where you could tie that in again, then I think we'd have more of a feeling of continuity and that it is one house instead of two. Kind of breaks up oddly this way.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I have a question. Is this staircase necessary for your second story / third story deck? Do you have to have two means of egress?
No.
Or can this be the one exit?
it could be, this could be the one.
Could this be the one?
Possibly, but you know, you don't even see that. You don't see those exterior stairs. And they go up a half a level inside, and then you go out and go up the next half level. So it's not a full height of stairs inside or outside.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Paul.
On a separate note, one of the concerns that we're kind of not addressing is the fact this is basically a one-story building with a deck on the second floor. That's what it is. The fact is that the plate height is at 18 feet, and then there's floor joists, and that makes it 19 and a half feet floor to floor, and then that's the deck. Where over here, when we have a deck, we have, you know, either 8, 9, or 10 feet, and then we have the deck above. So really the deck at this point is 11 feet above the slab, and this deck is 18 feet or 19 feet. So where I was saying the plate heights is a concern, it's the fact that we have really almost a 2-story volume in here, and then we throw the deck on top, and that's what's making the building what seems to be tall. The architect did design this parapet and everything lower than the original house, because the original house has a strong ridge across the top, so it has come down in height. But I guess I'm looking for some sections and some more understanding, and the section can show the original house profile and show what's being proposed, but it would be advantageous to have a section that goes through the staircase so we can see how this is working, as well as through this section so we can see where the primary profile of the house was versus what we're proposing. But I want people to be understood what this is going to be in volume, because that's where I'm having the most red flags in my head.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, to me, I never even considered this a one-story with the deck on top. It's a 2-story element with a deck on the second floor. I mean, on the roof of the second floor. So it's a tall mass. Okay. Any additional comments? Because we need to move the project along. I don't think we're going to come to a consensus for approval here today, hearing the comments that I've heard. So I want to get clear direction to the applicant for him to work on revisions that we feel would be appropriate for the neighborhood. One thing Bernie mentioned was the exterior stair. And we had some comments from the last meeting I think it was to study eliminating the stair. Now he did modify the stair and he made it more enclosed so that all the rails and whatnot. But I wanted to kind of get the board's feeling on whether that was enough of a move to sort of hide that stair, or is that something that the board feels strongly on to eliminate that secondary stair up to the roof deck? So I'm looking for some comments on that.
Mr. Chair, I guess
Yes,
my
Paul.
2 cents is I never really had a problem with it. I just get my opinion to myself last time, and like Brian says, it's whimsical. Where I have a concern is the one along the side property line, because of going up and down the stairs and how it might affect the adjacent neighbor. And if there was a way of, like Denise was saying, tying this architecture together, but maybe this can come down a little bit in height or scale, and that this stair is strictly in the backyard, it's the ocean view, it doesn't pertain as much. Plus we can bring down part of this element that would actually be showing over here at this end.
Okay. Some other board members, Bernie, I pretty much,
Well,
I think I know.
was just going to say,
I mean, it doesn't seem like it meets our guidelines to even think about having more than one exterior staircase. I mean, even with one, just to meet compatibility guidelines is going to be a big stretch. And along with the roof deck and everything else they're trying to do, I really think they've got to at least eliminate that.
Okay. Brian, how are you feeling on this stair issue? And
I'm fine. I'll have to say, maybe Bernie has a point about pushing the envelope in this regard. But like I said, I'm comfortable with this plan because I do see a fun whimsicalness to it. And we don't have any neighbors here complaining about the stairway, which would be a definite red flag. So it seems to me the neighbors are comfortable with this design.
No, you can't make that assumption.
Well,
I met with all the neighbors. They didn't have a problem with it.
so
They thought it was,
well,
good design.
let's hear from Denise and Aaron as far as the stair and the roof deck is concerned, because I think that's the major component here of compatibility.
Mr. Chair,
Denise?
I like that it was reduced in size, the deck. And I think it is hidden enough that it won't be that big of an issue. I don't know that you need two stairways to it. I think one could be eliminated. Although I do rather like this design on this exterior stair. I think that's good looking. It is whimsical, and it's not offensive at all to me, that one. But if you can have it interior, maybe that's the way to go.
Okay. Aaron?
You've brought down the stairs considerably in height
On the side.
on the side.
Yeah.
So
I guess the question is if the way it's designed right now and with this alternate design where it actually lowers it even more on the side, is this compatible to our guidelines and we can make findings with these two stairs going up to the roof deck that's there? I'm not asking you just to say yes or no, but it's the whole board that has to say yes or no. But we're going to have to come up with some sort of count that we're moving forward and we're going to accept this
Yeah.
design or not.
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Chair, I would say that then, for the sake of neighborhood compatibility, I think one of the stair sets should be removed.
Okay. And I know Bernie feels at least that way, maybe both of them, but both of them.
Well, it's all about balance, and not too much, and we do the best we can to make some preservation of these neighborhoods.
Yeah, I mean, the comments were pretty clear last time to remove the one stair.
okay.
So, I mean, those are pretty
The
clear.
rear stair were we talking about?
That were the comments, the spiral stair, yeah. It said study eliminating, but,
Yeah.
and I think what the applicant did was he made it more of an enclosed stair than a visible, out in public stair, which he did study eliminating it by shielding it more. So, I think we need to formulate a motion, again, giving clear direction to the applicant, what our desires as a board are on this project. And one roof deck, two stairs, 3 is probably this door configuration in the back. I think Denise and Paul spoke about this elevation here, going maybe back towards this design, which was, again, compatible, where this one was sort of two different designs. So I'm looking for a motion kind of tying all that together, and some other general comments maybe discussing about the front where this has been modified.
Mr. Chair, if I just might provide an input, I just thought I'm hearing the board discuss eliminating one set of stairs, and Paul made some good comments about maybe the interior stairs. So maybe if we can have a poll by the board to see if you do want to eliminate one set of stairs, and if so, which one you'd prefer to keep, the one at the rear or the one at the interior.
Okay. Well, I'm going to basically try to repeat what you just said there. So straw poll to the board. How many members of the board can support? Let's just back it. Can support two sets of stairs two sets of exterior stairs going up to the rear, going up to the roof deck as presented? We have one.
Waffling.
1.5. And obviously everybody else can't support the design. Okay. Let me try to phrase it another way. Could the board support two sets of stairs if Jim continued to work on the design of the stairs? And again, understand that this one stair may not be visible at all from the exterior.
What if this one stair here is a tower element, so it's totally enclosed?
This one on the side?
Yes.
I think that's kind of where the design started.
So that was not, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So how many members of the board would like to see a one-stair solution to the roof deck? And so there's two. I mean, if you went that way, you probably would have unanimous support. But I think I see reluctance here, where I still think there's a solution that you probably could get two up there and design it in such a way that you wouldn't even know that there are stairs behind some of these parapets and things.
Mr. Chair, my reluctance is having a deck that's really a third-story element. And that's where I lie, that this roof deck is too strong, it's too dominant for this neighborhood or this location. So I have a hard time actually being okay with this deck on, it's 19 and a half feet above the slab.
Okay.
Could I comment?
Let's continue here.
Okay.
Well, Paul's bringing up probably the biggest issue is whether or not the roof deck is acceptable or not, regardless if we have one or two sets of stairs going up there. So we probably need to, again, we've given them direction that to scale down the deck. We've never told them to remove the deck. We never got a motion that said it's not acceptable to have a roof deck up there. Paul might still be fine saying he's not personally going to approve a roof deck up there. Maybe I can ask Paul, if the roof deck was significantly smaller, would you be willing to see a roof deck on that third level?
Just for discussion's sake, the word significant and more to the interior, I mean, to take this section, if you were to move it more over to here, then it's more into the body of the house, and so there's more of the true two-story stuff that's happening around it, and then it becomes like an accessible mechanical well that's with your 42-inch parapet or something. That is different than where I see it here with the staircase coming up. It becomes, I mean, before it was even 700 square feet. It was much larger, so I would say it needs to be a lot smaller, and then it becomes a congregational space for maybe, less than 5 people, less than 10 people, but surely, not 15-ish or more. So if I was to be okay with something, because of the elevation of how high it is and its prominence when there's people and activity up there, it's got to be diminished in scale. And that's just from my perspective, and that's what haven't been able to verbalize. But I've been giving it a lot of thought.
Okay. Okay. Well, let's get another straw vote of.
On the deck.
Yeah, I think Paul was the most reluctant to say a roof deck is acceptable up there, and just based on his last comments, there's some design with a reduced roof deck that he sees as acceptable. So it's not as no roof deck. There's an acceptable design, but we're not there yet. Did everybody follow what Paul said about kind of reducing this and moving it to the center? If that solution came forth by the applicant, would that? And also, I'll bring the fact if we do that, there's probably no need for that second set of stairs on the side. right? So it would be a one-stair solution going up to the roof deck, and it would be towards the middle of the property, not on the sides of the property. If that design solution was presented to us, would that be an acceptable solution and compatible with the neighborhood? All those in, okay.
I think that that could be a good balance, and remember, we're trying that. I had a question, though. Does the deck have a fireplace or anything?
Yes.
or-
Yes, it does.
It does have a fireplace. Okay, so, yeah, thank you.
Okay, so if that reduction happened and one stair served the roof deck, would the board find that compatible with the neighborhood? We're only talking about the roof deck and the stair element right now. All those, the straw boat, yeah, if it's designed that way. Sure. Okay, so all those that believe that that design that I just described would be acceptable, raise your hand. Okay. Okay, so we have Aaron? 501, okay. So 5, there was no oppositions and 1, okay. Okay. So now, Jim, I think we maybe should talk a little bit. Is that direction that we just described something that you think that your
Yeah,
client?
that'd be possible.
Okay.
I think that this height is part of the whole design. We have a balcony that looks down into there, and we can't lower it because you're going to be looking into a wall. So the height of it has to stay the same. So I could possibly move it over,
Yeah.
and make it more centered in this area here.
Okay. So, I think we need to move on to give the applicant, again, clear direction. I think with that straw vote, it was pretty clear that the majority of the board still feels the deck is too large and not approvable. So I'm looking for a motion for the applicant to further reduction on this project and kind of weave in all of these other issues of design.
Mr. Chair, I'll float a
Paul?
motion, and that is to study reducing, sorry, not even study, reduce the upper deck in size and relocate towards the middle of the project. Provide only one set of stairs to the upper deck, and to
Do you want to specify where?
no,
Oh, okay.
Applicant's design.
Okay.
Oh, and then to provide 2 building sections through the building and show the profile of the existing structure that is being altered.
Okay. Do we want to talk about this? And this?
No, because this will get resolved when he designs whatever he designs. Well, whoever makes a second can modify the motion.
Okay. Looking for a second on that?
Second,
Bernie?
Mr. Chair.
Okay.
And I just was wondering, when roof decks have come before us in the past, we've tended to put a size. Do we want to give them a suggestion since we agree that this is not meeting the guidelines?
Paul, would you like to maybe clarify what your thoughts are of an appropriate size? I think you kind of visually pointed it. But
It's only a visual thing, and I understand. And I'm only drawing this because this line is here, and I understand there's going to be one ceiling volume below here, and whether that ceiling volume can have a bit of a shed roof, which is actually the slope roof coming up here, or whether it has to be all straight. But even if it's all straight, this becomes 2 different parapets because this has to be 42 inches high, and this one doesn't have to be. So you still can have all one ceiling on the interior, even though the roof deck has basically a 12-inch parapet on this part and a 42-inch parapet on that part. So a square footage, just diagrammatically, I just picked this line because that was in this point, and then where the fireplace goes is just in relationship to the rest of the architecture.
I think Jim has a pretty clear understanding of what Paul is saying. I'm not sure there's a number, but it's obviously way less than 500.
Okay.
Okay? So we heard a first, a second, and any more discussion on the item?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Aaron?
can we carry over from the last motion the item? Yeah, the 1A comment about studying the scale of the ocean-facing doors and
Correct.
trellis, and number
Number
2 about
two.
this site plan. And
Okay, those are good.
The stormwater.
Any additional comments? I'd like to just put some comments that I think the applicant is making some progress here. I think this reduction in the front here and simplification helps a lot. I think that this door with the transoms, it helped a bit, but maybe not enough. We'll find out. But I think it's mostly the roof deck and the stairs that are really the sticking points in the project. I think these elevations, they're rather simple, and from where it started, it was all over the map. I think there was way too much whimsy, if you remember it, a long time ago. So I think we are making good progress here, and I appreciate the applicant's patience. And
I do have one comment.
we're getting there.
All right.
Let us finish
Okay.
our motion here. So we had a first, a second, or comments. So now, Jim.
There was a neighbor that emailed me and said she was in support of it.
Yeah, we got that.
You got that?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
And it was read into public comment as well.
Yeah. Okay.
So, again, I see movement here, and I see even the next-door neighbor not at the meeting. So I think you are making some really good progress
Yeah.
here. Just at the board, we're still a little bit reluctant for the size of the roof deck.
If I can
Still
just,
comments.
No, just comment on where the section should be. One should be front to back, this direction, and if one was to go this way through and then that would sort of, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, how that is.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
So let's make a vote on the motion. All those in favor of the motion? Aye. Oppose? Abstain? Okay, unanimous. The motion should say indefinite continuance or
At this point.
indefinite continuance?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to move to item number 2 on the agenda.
Should we roll these up, or should I give these to Michelle?
I think we should. If it was put on camera, we need to keep a copy of it. This needs to go back to 23 Wade Court. Is there an applicant for 23 Wade Court here? Okay. Okay, so I'm going to read a quick. Yeah, Denise, if you. No, that's not it. We don't have that yet. Okay, so it's a proposal to construct a new 2,299 square foot, 2-story single-family residence and attached 400 square foot 2-car garage on a 9,583 square foot vacant lot in the Hillside Design District. The proposal includes 1,055 square feet total of loggias, covered and uncovered decks, and a roof terrace. The proposed total of 2,699 square feet is 76 square foot of the maximum floor to lot area ratio. The parcel is located within the non-appealable jurisdiction of the coastal zone and requires review of a coastal exclusion. And we saw this project, I believe, 2 weeks ago. And Denise has the minutes from that meeting. If you could read those minutes, please.
Number 1, the board appreciates the excellent design presentation. Number 2, review the recommended 15-foot setback guideline for second-story decks for the deck above the garage in the single-family residential guidelines. Study the second-story roof over the corner of the garage and soften the corner of a one-story element. Consider alternate designs for the turret. Study the front entry and second-story deck and study opportunities to open the windows to the entry court. Study the 812 roof pitch and ways to simplify the ornamentation. Reduce the amount of hardscape in the front motor court. Provide additional opportunities for planting. Return with a conceptual landscape plan and show compliance with the stormwater management program. Study ways to lower the perimeter wall as 8 feet in height appears excessive.
Thank you. If you could give your name.
Yes, thank
the
you.
record?
Craig Goodman, Goodman Design Studio.
Thank
and
you.
This is Chris Polonis. Chris Polonis, owner.
Welcome. I think you heard the comments, and obviously you were here 2 weeks ago. If you could respond to those comments and how you address them.
Sure. FAR is updated on our sheet here to show 76%.
Did we lose some square footage somewhere?
We, it was a net, it was a wash.
Okay.
Really. We added a couple storage areas and it was a wash. This is updated as well with the FAR study. I've added some keynotes, and you can see from the revised roof plan that things have changed. We've dropped the tower massing by 10 feet in its entire perimeter, and we've now utilized some good comments last meeting to enter the roof deck, the roof terrace from the garage deck. We're observing the 15-foot setback from both properties, and we've incorporated a green roof into a portion of the roof that's in the setback area. We also have a covered landing that then steps up to the terrace, a one-step landing up. We also restudied the entry, and we decided to break that up. You'll see that in the elevations, and some of the landscaping we've restudied as well. I don't know if there's all that much that's changed in the plan.
Okay.
The mezzanine level is the same, essentially, as it was before.
Yeah, maybe just the second floor and then go to the elevations.
So far on the roof deck, as you can see, we've pitched a shed roof. We're using a 7 and 12 all the way around now, and much cleaner. You know, nice 30, 60 degree geometry will read well from the distance. We've got really a pitched roof deck that will lead into a little channel that will slope into our green roof, and then we'll scupper out there. So there's no real need for a drain right there, but all the space is within the 15-foot, outside the 15-foot setback, and would be usable for the applicant. We've also provided a little storage area underneath the stair.
Okay.
And the roof plan just showing the green roof with some foliage, and then the call-outs of what we had there before, essentially. So nothing else has changed.
Okay. The elevations.
And then again, the streetscapes. I substituted the old design for this. You can see that the mass of the rotunda dropped by 10 feet. We've moved back the covered landing by 2 feet, and it's, you know, 6 by 9 rectangular space now. So we feel it's well within the solar ordinance that we were fighting against before. And it addresses some of the issues with the adjacent neighbor. That's we had a wine and cheese party, and we had
That always helps.
I think probably a dozen, if not more, neighbors from the region of the Campion Hill neighborhood come to see the project, and we had in-process drawings, and we were not at the solution that you see now, but we had a good time and a lot of great feedback from people there.
It helped us get here.
Great.
And again, just the same elevations. I've dropped in the full elevation now. Where we were, you can see the profile of what we've reduced. And then just the profile of the same view off Cliff Drive looking back up at the hill.
Okay.
And then again, the larger elevations. I have some colored renderings that'll help supplement these to provide a bit more. So the north elevation was the elevation that was redesigned the most per the board's comments, really. And we could start with the covered entry here. We opened this up, and we also rethought and restudied how we wanted to do the entry a little more traditional.
So this roof no longer covers that whole area?
It does. The roof plan hasn't changed in that location at all. It comes out a bit in from the west elevation. You'll see that. So you'll see in this elevation as well, the tower is sunk down. We are wrapping a step wall from the roof deck up to our cover deck, and we are about 30 feet still, but we are step backing in.
Okay. Is there any other?
There is. This elevation really hasn't changed too much. And then the east elevation, which is on top here, here's a rendering of that. Give you a sense of the massive reduction there. And then essentially we've got 3 windows here that are mezzanine, so our space is on the other side of that rotunda, and
Okay.
providing some good light in there. And then the southern elevation, just again show you the relative rotunda difference in height. And we have a trellis element facing our neighbor who preferred to see more of a trellis element at our meeting.
Okay. Can you go over some of the issues of the fence? I know that was some of the comments too.
Sure, let me get to the landscape. After talking with both neighbors, each neighbor wanted a different type of fence they preferred, so we're happy to accommodate them. Our neighbors to the downhill at 11 Wade Court, are a good 10 feet downhill, and would prefer a wood stain fence to provide more privacy and more sound privacy as well. So we're happy to oblige there. And we're going to keep it at 6 feet. We also have a easement of 2 feet, and the fence that it currently exists on this parcel actually exists 10 feet off the property line on the adjacent neighbor's parcel. So we're somewhat unclear about the easement that states it's 2 to 3 feet wide, and we're reading a 7 to 8 foot differential there. So we don't know if also there's maybe a way to use that as an additional screening tier as we step down.
And then the fence on this side?
And the fence on the what is that, the eastern side, Mr. Seaball would prefer a chain link fence, and so we thought maybe planted with some shrub. So we thought black painted chain link with the piers as shown, with shrubbery as shown.
And the height of the chain link?
6 feet as well.
And these square elements are,
The piers are 6 feet plaster as well.
so it's chain link in between.
Right,
stucco.
and then planted.
Okay.
Okay, the landscape plan here. Let's just deal with the motor court initially here. I know that there's a 25% permeability requirement for that. So instead of doing a ribbon, we thought we'd push it out to the perimeter and kind of pitch it in one direction, or allow it to have the permeability on the perimeter. So I've got pavers shown, and some of the areas that are going to be having a little more traffic or a little more dense. I do have a plant list called out now preliminarily, and we've got a suggestion that a pittosporum might be a good choice for a screening plant in this location due to the fact that we have our roof deck and the stairs in that location. So we're looking for some screening tree in this location still, but we've called out something preliminarily for that. For the lawn, we're utilizing the cool grass, the Marathon lawn, and we also would like to get rid of this English fig ivy that exists along with where it exists on the other side of the property, and replace it with a more appropriate ground cover. I think we've got star jasmine shown. I could continue with the plants, but I don't know.
Okay. Well, I think that was a good presentation, and I'd like to just kind of keep moving a little bit here. I'd like to move to public comment, open up public comment. If there's anybody, I have one public comment speaker split. Deborah Gibson, if you could sit in that chair, and let's get the microphone on and speak on it up to 2 minutes, if you could.
Okay.
And your name?
Deborah Gibson.
Thank you.
So we're just the neighbors on that side. We're at 11 Wade Court. Which
North
is,
or east?
They're to the north of
Okay.
us.
First, I want to say that I do think it's a beautiful home. They've done a beautiful design. And since the last meeting, I just appreciate how responsive Chris and Craig have been. We had a meeting, they talked with us, they really worked with resolving the issues we've had, on top of which they have agreed to take down the fence that's there now with the ivy that was a problem. I have one concern that's a small concern, and I can't really tell. I think I don't know the geometry enough to know how it is, but I think there's two things that I saw when you just presented it. When you guys asked to open up that one-bedroom window, will that look into our yard? And there's a stairway coming down through the garage, or from the roof to the garage, and that was a concern for me. Our pool is kind of right there. And it's possible, from talking to Craig and Chris, who have been very responsive on this issue, that you can't see it because it's up and back.
Okay, we'll ask
And
that question.
Okay, so that's what I just don't know. It's just would be nice because we like to hang out and be in the pool if there was privacy there.
Sure, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for your comments. Any additional public comment? Okay.
Yes,
Michelle?
Mr. Chair, I do have a letter received from Gil Berry, architect, and also a board member of the Braemar Ranch Neighborhood Association. However, speaking for himself, he just wanted to note that he and some neighbors are strongly objecting to the 6-foot high wall along the rear of the property line, and they've expressed the desire to not allow a wall or fence any taller than 4 feet, and they expressed that they could support a 6-foot chain link fence with hedge planting.
That was his request.
Okay, thank you. Any, again, additional public comment? Not seeing any. I'll close public comment and bring it back to the board for their questions. First question I'd like to ask is the questions from the neighbor. You could respond to those two
Sure.
issues.
Let's go back to the second floor plan. 2.2.
So it has to do with a window on that one side.
Right.
And where that is relative to her property. And
I think she was speaking about the bedroom window,
yeah, I think it was a bedroom.
which is wrong page.
Is
That.
Yeah, that was. This was just a, one mass previously, and there was recommendation, which I really liked, which opened it up. So I think that was
Okay.
that comment.
Let's see, yeah,
Too far.
let's go to just like a second floor plan.
Yes, second floor plan, that's what I was
One more.
looking for. One more. There we go.
So right now, it's either this door or this door that have to be the only items that are looking north. Just to kind of comment to the neighbor, both of these doors are, it looks like 30 feet from the property line. Okay? So your property line's over here somewhere.
Yeah, it's more.
Yeah, it's probably more than that. So that would be, I think, way sufficient to provide privacy and wouldn't be out of the ordinary at all. Again, the view angle with that fence, it probably, I'm not sure you could see it, but it's far enough back that it should not be an issue.
I think it'd be unlikely. I
Yeah.
can say that much.
Yeah. And then the second issue had to do with the stair and the pool, which I think was maybe this stair here.
right, and just to
Maybe you have to
answer
site
your
plan it.
question there, I did take a distance, and we are 89 feet from the top of the landing to the neighbor's yard. So,
To the property line?
no, well, to the edge of their inside property line, which is the probably the widest view cone of vision to look at our parcel from. So,
So distance-wise from the property line, I think is the property line's here somewhere.
yes, right here. Right
to
where the
this
fence is.
point here is more than 15 feet, because I'm sure you
Yeah.
redesigned it to meet
No,
that
that's
requirement.
the 15-foot mark, right.
Okay. So we'll kind of comment on that a little bit.
These two lines show that setback line, 15 and 15.
Okay, thank you. Additional questions to the applicant on the design?
Mr. Chair, if I might step in, I just wanted to ask the applicant to address whether or not you've shown your solar compliance on the appropriate elevation. I know we
Right,
had
I have
discussion
not
about that.
shown it on the study, the packet that I've received. Just trying to get this complete enough to show you today, but I'd be happy to do it. And I do believe that we are complying based on the last iteration, how much we were overlapping. This mitigated that substantially.
Okay. Jim?
How high is the train line?
6 feet.
And how high is this wood fence?
6 feet as well.
6 feet. I got a call from one of the neighbors driving
You've
down
got your mic on.
Cliff, and he wanted, which I agree, that looking up at these fences, they're going to look probably twice as high visually, I think, especially the wooden one.
So Jim, why don't we just, we're not in
Okay.
comments yet?
All right.
Well, I hear you coming. So additional questions to the applicant? I think it's pretty clear. I understand the presentation. Aaron, any questions? Yeah.
The concrete walkway, is there a reason that's not stepping stones or DG? Or there's a reason it's solid concrete there?
The owner really
This
wanted...
area? Oh,
Yeah.
That one that wraps around, yeah.
Oh, the one that wraps around. No, actually, there's no reason why it couldn't be pavers or
Okay.
DG. Do you have a preference?
no. Not really.
Any more questions, Aaron? Okay, Bernie?
Thank you. The first one is about the fence and about the chain link with the planting on top. I'm just wondering, did the neighbors give their support to that from the meeting that you had?
Yes.
And so I guess from a landscape point of view in the plan, we'll just make sure that the plants are there and it starts growing quickly. Okay, my second question is, on the covered roof deck, can you point out where that is? Right, there's a covered roof deck, and did we count that in the FAR or no?
You actually misspoke. It's just a covered landing.
There's just one small piece right here that's got a cover to it.
Can you just, I know that's obsolete, but is there a place there where you can,
Yeah.
oh, that right there, and that's uncovered? Okay. That's all for
Okay, so let's move towards comments. Anybody want to jump in? I'll jump in. I think the applicant has made pretty darn good progress in 2 weeks here. Meeting with the neighbors was huge, I think, and your concessions to the neighbors, and also things like the solar ordinance and some of these other aspects. I think the design has evolved into a tighter design and more in keeping with our guidelines. So I feel huge progress, and I'll leave it at that, and I'll wait for the other board members.
Where it was before and where it's going, and the thinking that's going into it, and really the sensitivity of putting that shed roof next to the neighbor property to the north, and the reasons for that, and how that didn't ruin your design, and even lowering the tower and having that serpentine stair, it didn't ruin the design, and it's working. So there was work that you did, and we can see it, we appreciate it. And the comment about the fence, the height of the chain link fence, once the landscaping grows, it's going to grow taller than 6. It's going to be wider than just a little 4-inch wide. So it's a landscape buffer. It's a screen, and I'm liking the direction the project is going.
Additional comments? Brian?
I was really bothered by the tower, but I think you did an excellent job of lowering it and making it blend in with the. Not that I didn't like the tower; that was beautiful. But the fact it's so close to the property line, I think you addressed that very well. So yeah, in fact, this reminds me of a Wind Tune project.
Sure. Would you direct from the stairway down to the deck on the second floor?
Per plan?
On the curved stairway?
2/3. Right.
This will work.
So those are exterior stairs?
They are.
Right? And then, and this is the deck right here?
Right. And so this first step acts as a curb to retain what's in here, but there's a little channel so it pitches in there.
Yeah. It seems like a really fancy stairs coming down to that small deck. And this is all planting.
Yes.
Right.
Within this line shows you the 15-foot that we can encroach into, and as well from that side.
Okay.
Now maybe your comments about the fence, if you want to continue those.
I think the chain link fence, I'd rather see a chain link fence on this side also and planted instead of a 6-foot-high wooden fence. And I would use I'd use a black vinyl fence. That tends to blend in better, and there won't be any reflection.
Okay.
And that's it.
All right. Aaron, Bernie, Denise, somebody?
Yeah, I'll go.
Okay.
I think you've made some good moves, mass, bulk, and scale-wise. I think my comments will just be detail-oriented. Some of the details on the building, I think could use simplification. I get a taste of Solvang in Santa Barbara on this project. That's just me. The landscape plan, the fence, I think you could use a vine instead of a hedge. Either a vine or a solid hedge, but on the landscape plan I see clumps of shrubs that's not necessarily going to cover all the chain link. So I think a vine that will quickly cover the chain link would be the best solution as far as the fence. I'd continue working on the landscape plan. You might want to look at a more drought-tolerant species instead of the star jasmine. I mean, it's a good plant. You could use it in some areas, but maybe not so much of it. And then my comment about the stepping stones along the side.
Okay.
Yes, Mr.
Denise?
Chair. Well, no one else has mentioned this, but there is an element that's not working for me, and it's this little piece. I mean, you lowered the tower, but then something else popped up in its stead, and I don't think it. I think that it lends to the Solvang feeling that you're speaking of. It's like this little piece that, although whimsical, doesn't seem to fit up there. It's like a little mushroom on top. This little covered trellisy thing on the. I think because you are so uphill, looking uphill at this, that's going to be way up in the sky, and I think it'll just really add to the mass of the building. And is it necessary? I guess that's the million-dollar question. You know, it's a flourish, but is it necessary to the architecture? I think you have a really nice architecture going on without it, honestly. Anyway,
All
that's
right,
my
great.
comment.
Bernie, did you put your comments in?
If I could, thank
Sure.
you. Yeah, I'm glad Denise mentioned that. First of all, I would like to thank the applicants, because I know they're really trying to work with the neighbors and put something different in there than anything else. And again, it's all about the balance. But is this an accurate depiction of what we're going to see, or
That's
did
the
that
old-
change?
That's the old
That's
the
how it
old. Okay,
was.
Can we see the new one? Because I'm freaking out looking at that.
Yeah. But it's colorful.
I think it. All right.
All right. So, let's see here.
So this is the tower from the side, Bernie.
Just
Here's
It's
a
actually
comparison.
lower than the main roof.
this is
Go ahead, you want to talk?
No, you're up.
Okay.
this is really the comparison you were looking at in this shot, right here.
Yeah.
Is this? It's at a different
Good.
scale. This
Okay,
is.
yeah. So I think this is a good example of making a change that is compatible with the neighborhood, so we appreciate that. But I agree with Denise, there's still several things high, and in particular, is this one of the new features? that's giving me problems. I'm trying to see how that fits our guidelines or how anything else anywhere near there has anything like that. So maybe we could address that.
Okay, that's a good comment. I had my comments at the beginning. There's one detail thing, but Aaron talked about some details, and I'll kind of poke my head into that. It looks like most of the doors and windows have a wood lintel over them or so. And again, there's a lot of stuff happening on the project here, and I'm not sure that's necessary. It could be just a simple plaster and probably read stronger, because I think there's just so much going on. Just a little bit of simplification may be good. How are some of the other board members feeling about that third story tiny little roof element up there?
I'll chime in that
Paul?
I'm equating it to an oversized chimney birdhouse-like thing. Sure, it might look a little bit on the funky side, and it's not quite well designed or refined yet. It can be further designed when they go to the next scale. But I think it's small enough because it's not more than 6 foot square. My battery must be dead. I'm sorry. So I don't have a problem. I mean, I think there's always room for improvement and enhancement, but it's not enough to I can see how it's working.
Okay. Denise?
Yes, Mr. Chair, well, I think we've already had an example today of an exterior staircase going up to a deck, and that wasn't acceptable to us. So we have the same situation here again, and where we've got an exterior staircase going up to a deck. Now, I love the changes, a lot of the changes that were made, but this is a pretty obvious staircase up on top like that, going up to this cupola thing. And I have to say that, honestly, I think the tower got too short. So it's like it's squatty, and the roof line it's not matching up. And I don't know. I really loved that last tower, although it was a little tall. But I'd rather see it pop up and the cupola at the top of the steps go away. I thought that was a better balance, personally.
Okay, thank you. So we need to kind of wrap up our comments into a motion. Again, yes, Jim.
When you come back, would you show the heights on your elevations so that we know, is this 30 feet
Yeah,
high?
they're all actually here, sorry.
Yeah,
No,
well, I'd rather see it actually dimensioned on the elevations.
The dimension of the elevations. Just not on the color renderings.
So this element that Denise was just talking about looks like it's at a 30-foot height above grade at that point. Okay, Denise?
One more thing, I'm sorry. I don't know if anyone else has any problem with these rather heavy columns on top here of this element.
Yeah, I would like to have the applicant study and plan. These walls are quite thin underneath there, and they would, I think, feel better if they were thicker, or maybe the same element would carry through or something. But in plan, it looked a little obvious that those walls were thin underneath. So I think that's a good comment too. Is this project ready to move forward to approval, or we're looking for another revision? I mean, I think there's at least 2 members of the board that have spoke about this top element. Paul was okay with it. I'm okay with it. Brian? Jim? Okay, so you got 4. Aaron? Are you?
We're a little on the fence there. I'm more than on the fence.
Could I?
Just quickly.
We really thought, a place where you could stop if it's raining to kind of get cleaned up, or, safety more than.
Just a landing.
Yeah.
So that was my direction was, I'd rather start or stop on something that isn't in the rain if it's raining. And so the functionality of it was driving that also.
Okay. Sure, Brian. Well,
Regarding the roof decks, because I know you guys were commenting about it, the things I'm looking at in the criteria of a roof deck are 2, is it invading privacy of neighbors? And is this current deck invading the privacy of your neighbors? It doesn't look like it. The other issue with roof decks is does it work with the compatibility of the design of the building? Does it look okay? And if it looks fine, then I don't have a problem with it. But I think, that's the thing about roof decks. And people complain about the fact that they invade privacy. Well, you actually can see people on a roof deck, where if people want to spy on you, they do it in a window, probably closed, in a one, so it's.
All right, so let's kind of wrap up into a motion if we could. Yeah, I weighed in. I think it was a positive, very positive design change. I'm okay with the roof deck. I'm okay with this element. Again, Paul saying there could be some refinement and simplification up there, I think, and it would be better.
Before we vote or make a motion, I think this is a pretty big project with a lot of impacts, and I really think it should come back to the full board.
Okay. Is this correct at 76% FAR? Okay. It does have a roof deck, but yes, Paul.
I was formulating in my head to say, preliminary or design review, not, but then to return back to full board in concept with additional detailing in certain areas for us to further refine, but basically to give the nod that the project overall size and scale is in positive direction.
So would you like to make that motion?
Is it design review? It's not
Project-
preliminary approval anymore.
Project review.
Project design approval.
So I'd like to make project design review.
Project design approval.
Exactly.
Preliminary?
No. No, this is.
So you're saying that you're okay with it exactly?
No, it'll come back for finals still.
It's coming back to full board in progress, providing additional information about the landing at the top of the stairs leading to the rooftop deck. How you provide additional information is for yourself, but I'm pretty good about your exhibits here. And to provide some additional information about the detailing, and applicant to look for ways of simplifying the number of design components happening within the overall structure. And that's following up a couple of people saying that there might be too many things happening in too many areas, and you can find your favorite 10 and focus with those instead of having 12 or 15. And that's it.
In the second to that motion? Okay, and under discussion, I think we need to add Aaron's comments.
Provide a line at the chain link property line fence. Provide stepping stones where we have a solid concrete pathway along the side yards.
Okay, and Paul, just I'm going to throw this one at you, the fence issue.
Yeah, I was just thinking the fence along the north property line that Jim made reference to, instead of going with a wood fence, to study providing a chain link fence with landscaping. And then the chain link fence should be a black line.
Okay, any more discussion about the motion?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Bernie.
For staff. So what are our two options? Design project review, come back to full board, or is there a lesser step we can take that we can say, we like what you're doing, but we still want you to come back and we...
That would be just
Well-
a continuance.
Yeah, it's just either you give it positive comments and say it's not quite ready for project design approval and come back in 2 weeks or whenever, or the board feels that it's ready for project design approval and makes that motion with the MPO findings, and then continued for final details.
So when they come back, they've already got approval. So how do we look at the changes that they've made?
There's two levels of approval. One's the project design approval, which is the most
Bulk
important
and
for the size,
scale.
bulk, and scale. Then the final approval is where you look at the details.
So they come back for final approval, but if we approve this, we're sending them off thinking, okay.
Okay.
I guess I would add two things. That we're expecting him to come back with some more additional information about the top of the stairs, that little cupola thing for the landing, and we want more information about that. The other thing, there was a comment made about the tower and the height, and it needs to go up another 12 or 18 inches from where it is, but you did reduce it from where it was to some point. And when you take the drawings to the next level, that type of minor tweaking is within your design purview, but when you come back to us, you need to tell us the things that change and how it begins the design.
Okay. Did you make NPO findings?
That's what I have right here.
Okay.
Consistency, the character of our city, compatibility with the neighborhood, quality building materials, and landscape.
Great.
Mr. Chair, with your comments?
Yes.
I know this is probably crazy, but would the maker of the motion consider a continuance rather than the approval?
I second that.
All right. Now, okay. Yes.
Say that again?
We have three that would like continuance.
So you just went from approval to non-approval.
We don't have enough people.
Did we vote?
We haven't voted yet.
Okay.
Okay,
But
take
if
a vote.
3 people would like it to be continuance back to full board and just make this
Could that,
preliminary for next meeting.
Well, that way, we're still in your discussion, right?
Well, you're the maker of the motion. You're the seconder, I think it was.
We haven't had a second.
Didn't you second it or no?
I thought we had a
Oh, yeah,
second.
he seconded it.
did.
Sorry.
Brian
Seconded
seconded.
the
So
motion.
I think, Paul, you need to decide whether or not this project is okay.
From my perspective, because of the scale of the house, I'm okay with the way the design is, and I'm confident that between us and the architect, in full board, we can work out these details, because they're minor in nature. They're not overall big glaring things that cause us to lose sleep at night. So I'm all right with saying, basically preliminary approval is fine for this project.
Project design approval.
Project design approval.
Okay. And we had a second.
I second.
Okay. So is there any more discussion? I think we should vote on the motion. It could be rejected, and then we can enhance it if we need to. So everybody understand the motion? All those in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. All those opposed?
Aye.
So it's 4-3. Motion passes. Okay. That's good.
we'll be very responsive to comments as it moves forward.
Okay. So announce a 10-day appeal period, and you're coming back to the full board.
Full board for sure.
I don't know how much time, but you're going to, it's continued indefinitely?
Definitely.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. So we're going to move to item number 3, 230 Lighthouse Road, proposal for an 8-lot residential subdivision of an existing 1.6-acre site. The existing church and all existing site improvements will be demolished and all existing landscape will be removed. The proposal involves a total of 5,180 cubic yards of grading. 2 private driveways provide vehicular access to all the lots. A common walkway and landscaping is provided down the center of the site to provide pedestrian access to each of the lots. Lot sizes range from approximately 8,000 square foot to 10,000 square feet, net square feet. An uncovered guest parking space is provided as part of the future proposed development on each lot, which will occur under separate applications. The project received Planning Commission approval on 7/23/2009 and is here for final approval of subdivision, grading, public improvements, and landscaping plan. And I'd like to read the comments, or have Denise read the comments from the prior meeting. She's probably here.
Okay. This was continued in.
There you are.
This is continued indefinitely to the Planning Commission and returned to the full board with the following comments. There are concerns about the building envelopes right up to the alley. It's not the right thing?
That's an old.
That's old.
Way old.
Oh, that's way old, yeah. That's 2009, hold on. So we're here, I guess, but there's no, I don't see any furniture. Motion. Is that it? There it is, there it is, okay, okay. What we got it? Okay, the motion, preliminary approval of the tentative map, grading and drainage, and continued indefinitely to full board for final approval with the following comments for the applicants to provide landscaping of the common areas and the public rights-of-way.
Thank you.
Sound better?
That sounds a lot
If you
better.
could introduce your team and your presentation, please.
Sure. I'm Lisa.
Detlef Pikert with Pikert Group Architects. Lisa Plowman, Planning Manager with Peckert Group Architects.
Jeremy Saltz, the civil engineer with Penfield and Smith.
Welcome.
Thank you. So we are returning after being here at the board, and I think really the primary issue was, as you said in the motion, was that you wanted to see what the landscape plan looked like before you gave final approval to the preliminary grading and drainage plan. And then the next item will be the homes that are part of that. So with that, I think we'll invite David. I mean, if you want to walk them through the plans, and then we'll invite David Black, our landscape architect, up so you can see the plan that's part of the single-family home development. He'll also be part of that presentation.
Okay.
Good afternoon, board. The first few sheets here are the public improvement plans, which I'm not sure how much interest there was in these, but the third sheet shows the street frontage improvements for the Public Works Department along the frontage of the project. So it's just showing the construction of the new, or replacement of curb, gutter, and sidewalk as conditioned in the approval of the project, and locations of water meters, sewer connections, and the driveway entrances, which are all essentially just meeting the conditions of the project for the street frontage.
Okay.
And then this is the start of the on-site improvement plans. We put together a site plan on the front that showed a few elements just for information, as far as where an electrical transformer is proposed to be located for the project up here in the center between lots 2 and 3. We've kind of shown a box here. There's more detail on the landscape and architect's plans, but of the covered entry and the mailbox location, and a location for an irrigation backflow preventer that will actually be behind a frontage screen wall out of sight from the street. And the other items that came up at our last review had mostly to do with this paseo and the perimeter of the project. Along the north boundary, we have a 4-foot max height retaining wall, and then a small slope up to a wooden fence on the property line. On the east side, we have a wooden fence along the majority of the property line. And when we get to the southerly portion, there's a low retaining wall with a fence above. And then between the school and the property on the southerly property line, there is a 30-inch max height retaining wall with a 5-foot screen wall. It's one single wall, partially retaining. So it's a 7.5-foot maximum height from the school side of the property, and generally a 5 or 5.5-foot height from the project side. And here's the grading plan. There's sections that follow this that show all the cuts through here, so you can see how the walls interact with the site and the adjacent property owners. You see the 2 private driveways, and then the interior network of walkways and landscaping, and this is showing all the storm drainage as well, and partially shows how we're meeting stormwater quality guidelines. We have a subsurface detention basin over here that you won't be able to see, some bioswales around, and what they call a filtera catch basin with a tree planted inside of it that is another bioretention filter. And this is detailed drawings of the driveway and walls. There's 2 sections cutting through the entire site. Section A is running north to south, so you see the low retaining wall at the north property boundary up to the property line where the wooden fence is. The center of the project where the public paseo walkways are and then this screen wall along the school boundary with some planting between this wall and the southerly driveway. And then the second section runs west to east with Lighthouse Road on your left, working your way across cut through 4 pads to the easterly edge, and this is the location where there's a short retaining wall with a wood fence on top. And then this goes into more sections cut throughout the whole area. These are the plans that have been submitted to Building and Safety now for their review.
Okay, thank you. Can we move to the landscape? Your name for the record.
David Black, landscape architect for the
Thank you.
project. This is not unlike what was presented to this board the last time. This is a preliminary landscape plan. I will point out sort of the minor changes that we've made based on comments and conditions. As an overview, there are 2 major components to the landscape. One is this the common area landscape, which is represented here. This is the central pedestrian way off of Lighthouse down through the center of the project, and provides pedestrian access to each of the units, the front door units, and then there is also common area landscape on the east and west sides of the project here. There was some concerns, or not concerns, but there were some comments from the neighbor at this particular unit, as I remember, regarding visual access to her house, and as a result of that, we've indicated that there'll be some upright screen planting all along this property boundary to create a sort of visual separation from the project and the adjacent residential units. I know too that Washington School at this location had some concerns about, again, visual separation. I think Jeremy's already talked about the masonry wall. There was a request to have cascading flowering vines, which we're showing here, probably Distinctus rivers, and provides some nice colorful flowering mass down the side of the wall. And then in addition to that, we're showing sort of an upright tree massings along the property boundary here. In this particular case, the Stenocarpus, the firewheel tree, which will create additional visual separation from the school and then the units as they're shown here. There's a requirement or condition for oak tree mitigation, 3 trees, and we're showing them at this location here and here. There is 1 specimen olive tree on the site, and which is being transplanted. I believe it's here, located here. This board made some comments relative to wanting to see some variety of canopy tree types. I think we sort of indicated that here. The plant palette as listed here shows the variety. In addition, there was some request for a little more variety as far as the palms. We're sort of anticipating that the primary palm massing throughout the project will be the Washingtonia robusta, but we're also showing opportunities for additional palms, and hopefully that'll meet the needs of the board. Street tree is the willow out front. That's the designated street tree within the city. We have a bio-retention area here, and appropriate grasses and what have you, but much of the drainage and stuff will go into this location here. That's the common area landscape as it's laid out. In addition to that, we are showing on this plan proposed treatment for the backyards, realizing, of course, that individual homeowners, once they take possession of the homes, will probably want to make some changes relative to perhaps plant species, layout of patios. And so for purposes of this plan, what we are showing then is a suggested layout of perhaps or potential lawn area, maybe potential patio area. We're showing it on the plan right now as bark mulch because we feel like that gives us the maximum flexibility in terms of what the homeowner may want down the road. We're not suggesting that that this be paved now because the homeowner may have some other notions about what they want their backyard to look. But the point of this plan then is to show, and the developer I know is committed to this in terms of the relative number of trees and how they're integrated with the overall landscape design as far as the common area is concerned. And so I think this plan best shows that. I would like to ask a question because it's been, subject of discussion for us is what the board would want to see when it comes to preparing final drawings, the level of detail in the backyards, given the fact that individual homeowners are going to want probably, have some input in terms of the design. So, what we could show is the lawn layout, the tree massings. I don't know whether the board would require detailed shrub massing descriptions. I'm sure you can understand the situation when it comes to selling property like this. So, and a homeowner's desire to, have some input relative to the landscape design ultimately. I'm only speaking of the backyards.
Okay.
That's it.
We'll try to address that question in our comments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I just might interject to kind of respond to that comment. I think for the purposes of the subdivision, that we're going to leave that alone, but as I've discussed with Lisa and Terry, that that'll be more of a final design review for each individual lot as they get final approval.
Right, so you're not approving this plan as part of the grading and drainage plan. It'll be part of the home designs.
That's right.
We're approving the common areas there here though. Okay.
I guess that's correct. That's how they're going to divide it up. Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you. So at this point, I'd like to move into public comment. I have 2 public comment slips in my hand. We'll start out with Dr. Walter Dukes. If you could come up, and if you could vacate that seat for just the public comment portion. And we'll have Mr. Dukes, or Dr. Dukes.
I go by hey you also. Well, I'm here to comment on the landscape plan as I did last time, and I have a couple questions for the landscape architect as to the...
If you could address the board, we'll ask the questions,
Okay.
but that's the way it has to work here.
Okay. I'm concerned about the impediment that landscaping may cause to the views, the historical views that we've enjoyed across this property to the ocean. And would like to know what the growth characteristics is of the trees that are being planted, and specifically the palms, and what their anticipated maximum height will be.
Okay. That's it.
Well, then I'd like to comment on it. If there is an issue, I would like to comment on that.
Okay. How does that work?
They're tall.
Okay.
Why don't you speak on if they're tall, what your comments would be?
If these plants were to grow to a height greater than the ridge height of the houses, then they would very likely impact the view that the property owners at 1809 Cliff Drive are currently enjoying. This is the view out of my office that I enjoy of the ocean, which has been significantly impacted by the growth of the eucalyptus trees, the other large trees that are on the property.
The subject property is
from there to there.
Right here to here?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure.
Basically. And all of those trees, except for the eucalyptus trees in the distance, are on the property. So as you can see, anything that grows above probably 25 feet is basically going to obliterate the views that we have of the ocean and the islands beyond. The city is quite aware of that. In the municipal code, as you're probably aware, chapter 22.76, they came up, your favorite, I bet, with the view dispute resolution process. My concern here is that we are creating a view dispute for the future.
Okay.
I appreciate the verbiage that they used here, which was views of the Pacific Ocean produce a variety of significant tangible benefits to the residents and visitors, and views contribute to the aesthetic visual enjoyment and environment of the city. benefits derived from views, trees, and vegetation and sunlight may come into conflict, that's what we're talking about, and upon neighboring properties by unintended effects.
Dr.
So,
Duke, we're going to have to, we
wrap
should get
this
about
up.
2 minutes. And
I'll give you one last thing here. This was done to establish the right of real property owner to preserve scenic views that they have historically enjoyed. So I would like to suggest or hope that you would consider limiting the height of any canopy trees so that they don't obliterate the views that we enjoy from this property.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
So we're going to move to Chester Calderi. Yeah, we'll keep that.
Thank you. The view that I enjoy currently in our condo, which is above Dr. Deuce's office, is a little greater than this one, but that's looking out right over the property. My concern is the height of the trees and whether or not it will ultimately just destroy our view of the ocean. I have a second concern. It may be too late to voice, but the traffic patterns in that area right now are horrendous because you have school buses, Lazy Acres delivery trucks, and now two driveways that are all going to be dumping into the Lighthouse Road. Lighthouse does not have any kind of stoplight access onto Cliff Drive. So I have not only the tree concern, but I also have a traffic concern because of kids and everything else. I'm a retired educator, and it does bother me to see the heavy traffic mixed with heavy trucks, buses, and everything else on Lighthouse.
Thank you for your concerns. We'll pass along those comments to the traffic division for the city. The next speaker, Nika Quinn. Gwyn?
Hi, everybody. I'm the property owner. Let's see where. Yes, that one. There's my bedroom right there. And so I'm curious to just ask. I appreciate the new introduction of some of the trees there, and I'm curious to ask what those are and if the height and if there will really be good shading there.
Okay. We'll have the board ask that question.
Okay.
And,
And actually, an additional question is that I think will be very exposed from this house, looking right. And we have all kinds of windows here, and so just whether there would be some.
we'll talk about the
enhanced trees there.
screening at that point.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any other public comment?
Yes, we do have a letter for the record from Natasha Campbell. This will be more specifically interested with the next item for the houses.
All right, thank you. Any additional comments? Okay, we're going to close public comment.
Letter, Mr. Chair, was there any mention, because some of the Washington school people called me about the wall, I think they had some comments about that.
That's again, we'll get into the houses development as well for noise issues. And she's worked very closely with the case planner who's reviewed the plans in great detail.
And Mr. Chair, just so you know, that there was a question about the trenching for the wall between the school and the property, which is provided on the grading plans. And they had a question whether there'd be trenching on the school property, and there won't be. So you can see that in the detail on the grading plans.
Thank you. So let's close public comment and bring it back to the board for their questions. And I think we need to have David probably respond to some of the questions regarding the species, heights of some of the tree elements and canopies and screening that's adjacent to the property.
Well, I think your landscape professionals could probably answer that question as well as I, but Washingtonia robustas are probably capable of getting ultimately 70 feet tall. But I would guess, too, that you'd be able to see through them. It's not like you're putting up a solid, screen massing there.
Yeah.
I suspect, too, that we'll probably plant these trees at, I'm guessing this is early in the game, but, trunks are 6 to 8 feet and at max, and they probably average 1.5 feet a year. So I suspect it'll probably be a long time before they actually get up above the ridge lines of the homes. But
Are there specific designation for where these Washingtonian palms are, or are they just general palm locations?
well, you can see the palms here. So they're either going to be the Washingtonias or the Queen Palms, generally speaking. And all of them are capable of getting 30 feet tall. The Washingtonia is a great deal higher, of course, but yes. The average height of most of the species of trees that are being shown here are probably 20 feet or so.
Most of the canopy trees would max out at 20 feet?
I would say, yeah, 20 to 25 feet.
Okay. So it's just the palm trees that would probably be above the ridge line?
Ultimately.
Okay. More additional question, or can you speak on this issue of screening on this side to this applicant?
Well, we're obviously on the plan we're indicated that there'd be some sort of understory of screen hedge. You know, it could be Pittosporum Brightonite, which is capable of getting 10 to 15 feet tall easily. We're also showing the Stenocarpus, which gets probably 20 to 25 feet also. It's not really our intent to have a 25-foot high green wall here necessarily, but what we are attempting to do is at least mitigate the views to the houses somewhat. I mean, when I say that, I meant sort of break up the view rather than having a 25-foot green wall here. I do always suggest, if I might say so, I mean, I always suggest that when people, because I've done this in my own life, but when people have an issue around property and they have the opportunity to plant trees on their own property, plant material, to sort of mitigate any impact that they may anticipate, I always think that's an opportunity as well. So,
thank you. Additional questions to the applicant?
I have one question. It has to do about the wall that's between the property and the school, and it has to do about the finished material. Is it block? Is it going to be plastered? And what's it going to look like until the landscaping grows over the top?
It's plastered.
And is that shown or indicated on the civil drawings, or is that going to be on the architectural drawings?
I think it's a note on the architectural drawings. It will. I mean, it is. We had it there, and I will want to confirm when we open up the plans. But that's the intent. Yeah.
Yes, Bernie.
Regarding Paul's question, just can you tell us the letter from the school? What are we in agreement with what they're doing and what they wanted?
Sure, I can point out the points of the letter, and this was forwarded to you as well via email.
It's just the concrete, the height, what the material is, and if that's what the people at the school were, because I know you've talked to them. So that's
in regards to what point? What the wall? Okay, let me see. These are more related to the house designs that I'm seeing so far. So as far as decks and material, here's provide a solid wall versus a fence along common property boundary with a school at a height to minimize noise levels in future homes.
So is that how tall is our concrete wall there that's going to be landscaped eventually, right?
Jeremy, you want to take that?
Yeah, the wall is 7.5 feet approximately from the school side and about 5.5 feet typically from the home side.
Thank you.
Additional questions? Brian?
Are you going to CC&Rs for this? Is that and so you'd probably have guidelines for people when they plant their own plants. Yes. So you'd have a specific list of plants or whatever that could, so that would kind of control whatever height people have.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but we're going to see a landscape plan for each of the houses as they become approved. Yeah. Okay. Okay. I have one question. The division between the common landscaping and the private landscaping, there's some sort of fence.
Yes.
What type of fence is that?
You'll see that in the architectural plans. It's typically a wood fence with plaster, pilaster.
It's all consistent in nature. Okay. Additional questions?
42 inches along the right-of-way here, and there's dividing fences that are 6 feet.
Okay. Let's move to comments if we could.
Mr. Chair, I'll jump in on the issue of volunteers.
Yes, sir.
First issue is we as a board, when we're laying out houses, we don't protect private views, and we're really clear about that. But then if we look in our single-family design guideline, it says avoid tall landscaping that interferes with the neighbors. It's a green light. Honestly, it's a green light. Today's not been a good day. Thank you for. It just says avoid tall landscaping that interferes with your neighbor's landscaping. So what I could see as a compromise is that if we eliminated 50% of the tall palm trees and scattered them about, because I've walked the site and I've seen the eucalyptus trees that are on the school property. They are huge. And so it's going to take 30 years for these palms to equal what the eucalyptus trees are. So I can see it's a long-term effect. I can understand that we don't want to totally obliterate people's use, and so I think there's a way that we can work with the neighborhood as well as work with the design of the architecture. So that's my comment.
Additional comments?
Paul, I think that's a good comment. I was going to say use them strategically. You don't want to see as many as we do on Cabrillo at the beach there. So I think so. That was my comment on the palms as well.
Denise?
One of the things to remember about these palms, I mean, there would be a moment years down the line where that canopy would be right there, but most of the time all you see is just this skinny stick. So of any tree that would be there, that would be optimum to maintain an ocean view, because you're going to be looking through that, not a big bushy canopy. But like Mr. Black said, it's going to take a long time for that to happen.
Okay. Again, additional comments. Jim, any comments?
No, I'd like to know, what are the walks? Are they colored walks or
Integrated
colored concrete?
concrete, scored and textured.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, question, was this, is here for final?
It is on the agenda for final.
Did it get preliminary design project
It did.
approval?
It did.
Okay.
At that time, it was
Well,
preliminary.
no, actually, I don't know that it did.
The subdivision did, yes. It got it got preliminary approval at the last time.
Okay, we had been seeking preliminary and final, I think, in one shot, and then you guys just decided to give it preliminary.
I'm just asking because I see a preliminary plan, so I thought this was for preliminary plan, but it's up for final.
Opportunity to continue discussion on the landscaping when you look at all the houses and everything, but this is kind of in connection with the grading drainage plan and the subdivision.
As part of a final landscaping plan, we usually see irrigation. We see,
Well, yeah, this is a preliminary plan.
So
the final plan actually will be a detailed plan and irrigation.
Project
it's
design.
on agenda for final, but I'm not sure it's up to the level of final at the moment. That's kind of the discussion.
Yeah.
It was my understanding that the landscape plan was more informational as part of that, the grading plan, so that the grading plan is what we're seeking the final approval on.
Is that true, Michelle?
Yeah, and in your previous motion for the subdivision, you said request a landscape plan. So that's why they're providing this. But yeah, I mean, ideally, this is a final approval for the subdivision, and you want to see the common area landscape.
So we'll see the continuation of this landscape plan in the development of the next item.
Correct.
Hopefully.
Correct.
Okay. So, any additional comments? Okay. So we're going to be looking for a motion. Hopefully, we can get the applicant through here. I think we need to be real specific about the palm issue if we are in agreement about that. Looks like two of our board members have discussed reduction of the quantity of the palms and using them more as an accent versus a grouping, I guess. Maybe it's not the right word.
Level as far as the Washingtonian palms. But I think it's ready for project design
Is that
approval.
a motion?
Go ahead.
Discussion for a moment. There are other palms that don't get that tall. Anybody thinking about perhaps changing species on the palm tree?
Well, we have several species listed. I would remind the board that these are two-story homes, so are we really looking for something that's going to be a bit more in scale? So your phoenixes and even your windmill palms, they just don't have the scale that either a king or a queen or the Washingtonians do. I mean, ultimately, that's sort of the intent. And besides, we, given the architectural character, we felt like the palms were a nice complement, if you will. I would point out, too, and this is not the final plan, obviously, but if you actually sort of sit down and look and see where the palms are suggested, there's some here, there's some here, and there's some here. And we're talking at scale, they're quite far apart, if you just sort of study this. It's not like there's a grove throughout. Because I know when we laid these out, we try to be cognizant of the views of the individual homeowners, too, as well.
Okay.
I just point that out.
So Aaron or Denise, I'm going to look to you guys for the landscape comments, obviously. Do we have any questions or comments regarding the grading, the public improvements? I think we kind of got through that. The issues of the fencing, we've got through. So if one of you could make a motion saying, those items are basically fine, and throw in whatever comments that you think are appropriate regarding those palms, and we'll see if we get through.
So am I making two motions, one for the civil?
No, I think it's just one motion. You're not necessarily approving this landscape plan, just maybe the concept of the plan, because we're going to see it again at the next level.
Mr. Chair and the board, if I might add, you as a board can request to see the final, more concrete plans for the subdivision common area on this subdivision site, and that would be more typical. They just have chosen to present the landscaping plan as part of the individual homes, but I think if you guys aren't comfortable with the presentation now for landscaping, you could say continued and provide final plans for landscaping for the subdivision.
May I ask a question then? But on these other individual plans, is the common area also called out on that, on the following plans that we're going to be looking at?
Yeah, the common area is called out. And I mean, this plan is part of our overall 8-lot subdivision and is part of the 8 units that are going to be reviewed in the next package. So whether you approve it as part of this or approve it as part of that is sort of 6 of one, half a dozen of another. But you would only
more
be
detail on the other ones.
Yeah,
so.
it will come back with more detail. Yes,
including
here. Including the common areas.
Not
That's
today.
correct.
Okay, I was thinking that
That's
would be
correct.
today, but okay.
So it seems sensible to me that you would just take action on the grading and drainage plan and the improvements, the C1s and whatnot, and then leave the landscape plan to the other item that you're going to be reviewing following this. And then you can make your comments about the palms.
Does that make sense to board members, that we're basically just looking at conceptually right now at this landscape plan in regards to grading and improvements, and then look at it in more detail and in a final format eventually on the individual approvals of the houses? Okay. So somebody willing to make a motion regarding approval on the project?
So final approval of the subdivision grading and public improvements with the continuation of the landscape with the final review of the architecture.
Does that work?
Well, the only problem is the architecture, as you notice, this is a subdivision, and it's going to be 8 single-family homes on 8 single-family lots. So eventually, each individual house is going to get a design approval, and therefore, that's when you focus on the private yards for landscaping. But I think it would make most sense to give the common area landscaping approval at this level in the subdivision.
Well, I mean, I personally feel if we're giving a final approval to landscaping to any area, we need to see final landscaping plans.
Well then, continuance.
Can we give it project design approval?
They already have it.
They already have it.
Yes, Paul.
If you all can hear me, what I would say is we could, positive comments returning back to consent in 1 week for final. And in that final, we're expecting a final landscape drawing.
Won't happen.
Too soon.
Indefinite continuance.
I would say that we're fine with the grading and all those issues, but the landscaping, where city staff is wanting us to give final on the landscaping, and it's not there yet, then we have to really decide.
I think we're getting some clarification from staff right now, it sounds like.
The confusion is that
You could give us unofficial preliminary. I realize
You already have preliminary.
We only have that on the grading and drainage plan. That's what we have.
Not on the landscape.
Yeah, and that's what was presented to you at the last hearing, was just the grading and drainage plan, and you wanted to see the
Well, I'd
landscape
like to
plan.
get some kind of feedback preliminarily as a basis for moving ahead with the final drawings.
Yeah, which we're close to having. I think the confusion is that this is really one project, a subdivision, not a single-family home. You're typically reviewing single-family homes individually, but you're here being asked to review the whole project as a whole, as well as the individual homes. And I think that's probably just a unique situation that hasn't come up before.
Yeah.
Like we approved the grading.
Correct.
Now do we approve the public landscape as well?
I think we have some clarification, Michelle.
Yes, I just spoke to Senior Planner Jaime Limon, and he reiterized that the common area should be part of the subdivision plan, and if you're not comfortable with the final approval details at this point, then you can continue it to consent maybe and let the landscape architect.
Is there any way of splitting the grading from the landscaping at all?
I think that would be a reasonable request. So we can do final approval of the grading subdivision and then continue the landscaping common area for final on consent.
Chair, then I'd like to make a motion, and that is for final for the grading and drainage plan as it is presented today, and having the landscaping return to consent indefinite with the comment that the applicant is to reduce the number of skyline palm trees
And this is for the common area.
for the common area.
So that's a first?
I'll second.
Second? Discussion? When you say reduce, is there a certain...
Let's get a number on
It's kind of arbitrary.
We can,
30%.
I was saying 50% because it's an easy number to count. 30% is another one that was just floated.
So we, first and second, is everybody comfortable with it going to consent?
Yes.
For
Landscape.
final?
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Okay.
Well, I guess the only...
Hold on.
I'm sorry.
Can we ask the board for what they feel a number should be for the...
I think that, the two landscape architects should weigh heavily on this as well.
I'm looking at it, and honestly, what you're looking at here, you're seeing a lot of shadows from the palm trees, so it's really not that many on here when you really look at it. But I would say 50% is a little heavy-handed, but that 35% would be a good number to reduce it by, personally.
So the comment would be to reduce between 35 and 50%.
Denise, how many palm trees are there right now?
Roughly.
I don't know.
palm trees to choose from. Well, so we don't know how many there are for one right now, and so that's why I wanted.
There's only two species that will actually be an issue.
There's only like 40 palm trees.
I mean, I was thinking a number about 10 to 12 Washingtonias on the whole site.
30%, what is that? What was good at math?
Is it possible to meet with the neighbors who are concerned and come to an agreement?
I think we need to make this decision here, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's 12 palm trees that would be reduced in height.
Right.
So,
of the total.
of the
If
total.
everyone
Of the
is
total, 12 would come
fine.
at 35%.
So let's go with Paul's.
35%.
At least 35%, that's the motion. Any additional discussion? Okay, so we'll take a vote on that. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Okay, the motion carries. So,
Now you're going to do your thing.
So do we get this?
No, you have print copies.
We have
Oh.
because it was on the camera.
Well, wait a sec, that's an original.
That's an original one, too.
It's all right.
Scan it.
I do in my sleep.
it's going to change. So we're going to move to item number 4, which is 230 Lighthouse Road, the same site, and it's the architectural portion of the approval. And we'll wait for the plans to get to the counter. You might be able to get a copy of it at some point.
David, you should stay. We may need to look at that again.
So we don't need these anymore.
Daddy, are you going to roll these plans out?
Those are the civil.
Oh, she's got that. Should have a colored one in the center.
So Denise, do you have the minutes from?
Yes, I do, and I hope these are the right ones. 11/8/2010.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so this would be that.
So if you could read the comments from the previous meeting.
Yes, sir. Definitely to full board with comments. The board finds the architectural style and two-story design acceptable. Reduce the plate heights of the buildings. Provide a roof plan that depicts the two-story element on the plans. Provide combined overall elevations for both streets for all proposed houses. Provide photograph documentation of the surrounding neighborhood. Provide computer-generated models. Study options for using different types of canopy trees or different species of palm trees rather than using only palm trees. Provide additional detailing of the courtyard with some Spanish elements. Include 3 replacement oak trees on the landscape plan to replace the 1 oak tree proposed to be removed.
Thank you. Reintroduce your team, please.
Detlev Pikert, Pikert Group Architects.
Lisa Plowman, Planning Manager, Pikert Group Architects.
David Black, Landscape Architect.
Thank you. If you could go forward with your presentation.
Okay, so what we have, these are not in color.
This item is on for concept review for the 8 homes in its entirety, but what we're going to ask the board to do is look at this packet and then create and draft 8 single motions to represent lot 1, lot 2, lot 3. Sorry, I didn't have my move. We're going to ask the board to look at this as one complete project and then craft 8 motions. And you'll see on the agenda it's identified as an MST case with lot 1, lot 2, lot 3, because it's what it will be eventually is 8 single-family houses on 8 single-family lots. And that, therefore, if you have issues with one or find one great, they can proceed on an individual basis to get project design approval and final approval.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you. So just kind of reiterating, where these plans are at now is they're really ready for design approval, and we'd be wanting to come back fairly soon for final approval. But I understand, the situation that we're in.
And do we want to go through the comments?
Yeah, well, I'm going to get, exactly.
Michelle, just a clarification. It says concept review, so we're not here for project design approval, right?
Like I stated, if you feel confident that one of the units is great, we're going to draft 8 single motions, and you can grant project design approval of that lot 1. Or
Okay, so it is, okay, got
So
it.
theoretically, we could have
Got
that
it.
design approval today. Okay, so the first group of plans here are actually the civil plans. So I'm going to just start with the site plan. And, I think we've already had quite a bit of discussion about the concept of the plan, just reiterating, the walk street and the private lots with the common walk street areas and the low fencing that divides the private areas from the public walkways, et cetera. One of the things that we wanted to illustrate in response to one of the comments in the list of comments was the modulation between the first story mass and the second story mass. I think you were interested in seeing that, in fact, the basic footprint on the ground floor is, or I should say on the second floor, is substantially less than the ground floor footprint, so that the houses themselves are pretty well modulated in that respect. And of course, given the private yard requirements and the driveways and the common areas and all that, there isn't really much room to go any further with that. But we're quite satisfied that this really creates, a nice kind of interplay of mass, among the various buildings here. So why don't you just remind me about the comments and anything
Sure.
pertaining here?
Sure. The comments that we received from the board at the last meeting had to do with reduction of plate heights. There was a question about that, which we will go through. And then the question about the roof plan showing where the second story elements were, which we've addressed here. You wanted us to provide overall combined elevations of the alleys, which we have done and which Debbie will get
I'm gonna
through
show you in a
too.
moment.
And then computer generated model graphics that we've provided here, as well as the photographs of the surrounding neighborhood. So each one of these things we've addressed, and Debbie will show you on the plans as we go through them.
So, purpose of these renderings is to be responsive to that issue. So that's just kind of an aerial view showing the project as a whole, as seen by a bird flying overhead. And so you can kind of get a sense of how the roofs are modulated with the higher and lower elements, and the roof or the second story decks, how they're positioned, and how the walk street interacts with the overall building. And then you can see, some artist's rendition of the landscaping at the property lines, both north and south and east. So that was something that you requested, and we wanted to show you that. And then additionally, we just wanted to show you a view of the project from the street. Those are the two buildings that actually face Lighthouse Road, with their front entrances actually facing the street there. Here you see the plaster walls, and then the entrance pergola here that leads through to the fountain in the plan over here. And kind of gives you the sense of that. So then I'll just move on from there to these composite elevations. Again, this is the elevation from the street, rendered and in color and everything. But what you're looking at here is the composite street elevations. Obviously, they're hard line working drawing elevations with some shadows in them, so they don't have a lot of the entourage and coloring and all that. But it gives you a sense of how these building masses and how the individual houses relate to one another, and what they look like from as a composition from the driveway. So these are the two north and south driveway views. And then we can come back to any of these. I'll just go through some. That takes a lot of time. And then these are the views of the interior from the walkway, from the common walk street, looking both north and south. And again, these are really the same basic elevations that we showed you earlier in the rendered version, but now they're hardline working drawing versions, again with some shadows, just to kind of give you a little bit of a feeling of how the buildings relate to one another. So that was a request that you had. So then from there we go into each of the individual houses, and you'll see in the lower right-hand corner there's a key plan, and that shows which house we're looking at here. These are the floor plans, obviously, and again, I'll kind of go through this. Obviously, there's going to be 8 complete sets of plans here for each of these houses, so I think you'd probably be primarily interested in the elevations. Second story here, you can see where, again, the ground floor mass, extends out beyond the footprint of the second story, and here's a upper story deck, and then some low roof areas over there to the south. And that's the roof plan, and these are the elevations. Again, they're hardline elevations, ready to be finalized for final review.
Okay, so that was
So
this
that
unit
was
right here.
one unit, exactly, one building. So we're just getting started. So I'll just keep moving through, and then if you want to come back to any of these, we can just easily do that. But if you want me to stop at any point and answer any questions, then we can do that too.
See them all, or should we see one and make a decision?
Good question.
Yeah. I vote for giving one our attention at a time.
Sure,
And then
that's fine with me.
either sending it through or seeing come back. Otherwise, we're going to be bogged.
And I think we could speed up through them, but if we look at one building as one project like we've been asked to do, kind of ignore the rest of the designs.
Sure,
We've
that's
seen,
a good
we've
idea.
seen the general
Right.
theme, which we understand.
Mhm.
I think we can give specific comments to each one of these. But now, we have to open up public comment on each one of them. If that...
No, public comments is one.
Okay. Okay, we haven't even seen the presentation on the other 7 lots yet, really. Okay, so let's just find out from the public, which I don't have any slips at the moment. For the
When
one
we
that's
get to that
over
one?
by you. Okay.
We'll focus on that
Okay,
one.
so
Okay, so you can, if you want to just.
we'll open up
focus on
public
it.
comment for the item. Is there any comment?
Yeah, I'd just like to again acknowledge a letter from Natasha Campbell, the Facilities Committee for the Washington School. And she, again, addressed issues with the applicant and with the case planner regarding details to the noise and how each design of the houses are developed to minimize the noise from the school for the potential property owners.
Thank you. Okay, so if you're gonna, you have to fill out a slip if you're gonna have a comment.
I did have a slip for
It was for item number 3.
No,
He'll fill out a slip if he wants to make a comment. Come on. Hold on, you have to be on the mic. I'm sorry.
Just one quick question. I'm Chester Caldera. The question is the conformity to the 25-foot. It hasn't been mentioned as yet by the architects.
Of the 20, of what?
The 25-foot
Height. Oh, the height.
The height restriction?
It hasn't been mentioned as yet. I was just wondering if that was being addressed.
Okay, we'll ask that question. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Any other public comment? Seeing none, I'll close public comment, bring it back to the board for their questions. One question is, do all the buildings meet the height restriction?
The height restriction is 30 feet, and they're all
I see
in the
25.7
25-foot
here.
range. And one thing I will note is that in response to one of the requests from the last meeting to lower the plate, we did lower the ground level plate height to 9'6" and the upper level to
It was 10 and 9
8'6",
before?
and it was 10 and 9
So we went
before.
down a foot in
Yes.
plates. Okay, additional questions? Brian?
Yes. Are we looking at these ones? They look like, those are 1 by 2, or 1'2".
Are you on the right
But you're
plan,
looking
Brian?
at-
You're on, let's go to...
You're way ahead of us. Well, there's some wood.
Those are columns.
So those are columns, they're plaster, they're 1 foot, they're 14 inches, yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Any other questions for the applicant? Aaron?
The decks, are they in relation to each house? What's the distance between decks?
And that's
What's-
kind of
what's
the
the
hard
minute- what's
question
the-
of seeing 2 plans together.
Let's go back to the site plan. maybe to see
Or
that.
that drawing?
Go back to the site plan.
This one right here.
Yes, right there.
There we go.
So I think what Aaron's leading to is we have a dimension that our board sort of is, there's a guideline dimension that we need to uphold. We want to understand that this meets that guideline.
16 feet. Yeah.
Like, right, well,
The
is
new
there
deck's
a roof
facing
plan
one
that
another.
shows decks?
Each individual unit has a roof
But
plan
not
that shows
combined.
that. Well, I can kind of tell you where the decks are. For example, this one has a deck here. This is a low roof area. This one has a deck here.
Second floor
and-
deck?
Yes, second floor decks are facing south.
And
These
one at the
have
back,
decks
too,
facing south, and then one at the back as well.
They all have one.
So So in other words, this one's 16 feet setback from the property line. That's what we're looking at.
That's what you're getting to?
Yeah.
I think it is.
One closer is,
Right here.
You know, like,
There's a guideline.
is there a privacy issue here? Maybe, you know, that's what I'm getting at.
Correct. So there's a guideline of 15 foot from a second-story deck to a property line. That's the question. So
A balcony?
a deck.
That's about.
Well, we'll have to go to this. I mean, let's look at this one right now. So we're only looking
Yeah,
at this
we're
one.
looking at one at a time, so carry them over.
Okay. So
In this case, there's not an issue because of more than 15
Yeah, this
feet,
one's
even if
fine.
there were.
That one is within our guidelines.
and you know, there's not a issue here. I don't believe, since there's a common area, but it's this relationship between properties this way that might become an issue as we go through the plan. So that's just a question that Aaron brought up, and it's a good question.
Yeah. Okay. So lot 1 complies with that.
So want to
Yes.
go back to the elevations? Or?
So
Okay.
questions regarding Lot 1? If not questions, we'll go to comments on Lot 1.
Yeah.
That is Lot 1.
No, it's not.
This one?
It's that's this one.
This one?
That is this
Sure.
one on Lighthouse. Isn't that Lighthouse here? Oh, oh no, you're right. I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
this
you're
one.
right. It is. Lighthouse is here. Pardon me.
So that, yeah. So this is the one that we're looking at right now.
We're actually looking at that
Okay.
one.
Bernie, question?
No, I'll wait for comment.
Question, is this a typical color palette?
At this point, it is. We'll be coming back in with, full color board and all that. But yes, generally speaking, it'll be
Okay.
sauteed.
I have another question. The fireplaces, are they just gas appliances?
Yes.
So none of the chimneys have to meet code or anything? Okay, so they're just decorative chimneys?
Right.
Okay. Okay, so we're into comments. How about some comments on the general layouts and the architecture?
Well, I have one comment. I'm not sure what the thickness of this is on the floor plan.
That is 14 inches.
Yeah,
14
4'2".
inches.
Yeah, square.
Yeah, okay.
It's also a floor plan sheet,
Yeah, just a-
Paul, any general comments on the architecture?
On number 1, no.
Okay, good. My comments would be positive, and I don't see any.
I'd like to comment then, if I may.
Yes, Bernie.
Okay. Because I know we've been talking about this project for many years, and here we are with 8 new houses right on the mesa, brand new. I'm turned on. So, just in particular, I appreciate the courtyard feeling and the landscape plan with open space, and I know that you're all really trying to do a great job to integrate. I guess it's not working.
Well, you're
Green?
Where's your mic? It's right here.
You got to get it closer, I think.
Okay, so, let's try that.
Is it under your scarf?
Yeah, you got it. Let's go it up over here. There we go.
All right. Can you hear me now? I really am concerned about the pedestrian visual impact, in particular of this house right here. It seems to be very close to the sidewalk. Kids are walking, parents are pushing strollers. It's got a lot of bulk there, and I would prefer the ones that are closest to the street to be lower and set back further, just in particular the ones closest to the street.
Thank you for your comment. Brian, any comments? Anybody?
Well, these houses remind me a lot of G.W. Smith. G.W. Smith's
Appeal to it, so I'm very comfortable with it.
Okay, Denise?
I have favorable comments for lot 1.
Okay. Jane?
I don't have a problem.
Okay. Aaron? Good?
I have favorable comments. The one comment, positive is the overall ridge here is 25 feet 7 inches, and when you're over 85%, it's 25 as our threshold. They are at 85%, and it's 7 inches over, so that's, I would say, it's not an issue.
So Paul, is there a chart that says the FAR in each one of the lots? Is that what?
There is a sheet at the front that goes
I
very
believe
carefully
all of them are under 85%, so that's why for all of the lots, 30 feet is the maximum height.
Okay. Okay. So we've got positive comments. Bernie has some issues with the massing of this, particularly on the street side. I think you're just going to be outvoted, Bernie, but I appreciate your comments. But I think your comments are good, that the landscaping might be developed a little bit more there to just give a little bit more privacy to that and reduce the visual impact from the street and vice versa.
Well, there also aren't any other two-story houses on, there's the corner with the commercial and the residential, but that's just going to be, you know, I mean, it's just something to think about, just 8 new homes.
Yeah, I mean, they're approved lots, and they're single-family houses, and they're nowhere even close to the height restriction.
And right
And they're
across the
two-story.
street, they're all two-story.
Two-story.
All these units here are two stories.
I think they're really pretty too.
So,
So I'd like to float a motion
okay,
to give this approval.
Project.
Design approval. We changed the name on what we do, so we're all confused. Project design approval for Lot 1,
making NPO findings.
making NPO findings of neighborhood compatibility and strength of materials, consistency of materials, and quality of materials. And what else?
That's probably
That's
fine.
probably fine. Huh?
Okay. First, is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Second, Brian. Discussion? Anybody? So I'd like to make a vote on that motion. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Bernie, and abstentions, none. So that Lot 1 passes, 6-1. Okay. So we'll go to Lot 2. So here's the plan.
If we want to look at that first on the, shall we do this first? We'll start each one by looking on this plan.
Okay.
So, sorry, Lisa's going to clarify, having pulled the guidelines to be sure that this is not an actual sort of ordinance requirement with respect to the deck, but rather some
A guideline.
Right,
guidelines and
right. So there's a
suggestions.
series of techniques that are suggested in the design guidelines to minimize the impact a balcony or a deck might have on the neighboring property. Some of which is using landscaping or incorporating architectural screening elements, enclosing it on one side. One of them is to locate the second-story balconies and decks to avoid direct sight lines. One of them mentions a distance as a suggested way to minimize that, and then it goes on about chimneys and balconies and whatnot. So basically, I think what we did was in designing and Debbie can speak to this, in designing the houses, we tried to stagger everything so that you wouldn't be looking right into one another. And so while it may not be specifically responsive to every single one of these suggested techniques, we felt that the goal had been achieved in terms of making sure that there wasn't a privacy impact.
Okay, so we'll go through each review and we'll make sure
And
that
the
that they...
landscape plan, I think, will help inform that.
Okay.
Mr.
and
Chair,
again,
just on
these
the
are
deck.
all
Oh, sorry.
internal to this subdivision. It's
Well,
not
let
like
me do
we're
his
talking about
presentation.
a house next to another private residence or something. They're all really designed integrally into this subdivision. Sorry, but
All the decks, and I don't think Paul or I has an issue with the relationship of the decks to each other, just overall.
So this one right here?
We're on number 2, Lot 2.
Okay.
Yes, Dan, Lot 2.
Let's stay on Lot 2, okay?
Yeah.
I'm just looking, boom.
Yeah.
Right there. So,
Okay,
So there
so-
is a deck back here for each one of these units.
in the front here?
No, this is the
Back.
Oh, the-
this is these. I'm sorry.
I don't think so.
I'm sorry. I'm
They're
over
all
here.
only on the
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm on the
They're
wrong
all
side.
on that
I'm on the
south
wrong
side.
side. That's right.
Okay.
Okay, so for Lot 2, the area on the second floor, that's a deck, is this area, okay?
Okay. Here's 16th scale. Oh, my favorite. 16th.
8 by 2. Well, it's dimensioned on the plan,
It's
so we can
dimensioned.
come back to
So
that.
we'll come back.
So let's go through the architecture. Let's have the applicant actually go through the architecture of the building first before we take it apart.
Okay, so again, we're looking here at the floor plan for this second one that we're looking at. And we can come back to that if you have issues there. So here you see that the northerly side is low roof, and then the southerly side with the views is a deck, and you can see.
Yeah.
7.5 feet by
38. 28.
And that is the roof plan. And those are the elevations.
Okay.
And here, here we have at the second story kind of a more Monterey style balcony, and we are using 6x6 posts, wood handrails, etc. And then on the I'm not sure which west elevation that is. We've embellished that a little bit with a sort of tile canopy over the main window there. But the rest kind of speaks for itself.
Okay. All right, thank you. So Michelle, we're not opening up public comment again? Okay. All right. So questions for lot 2 to the board? Question, I do see some color indications showing up here. Are they all consistent right now?
Well, yes, I think they are. I'm not 100% certain actually, because we're still in the process of working on the color scheme, and so we haven't finalized that yet, and we will be coming back with it. I haven't really reviewed. I think this is part of the process of moving the drawings along and making sure we cover all those items, but that is not necessarily the final color selection yet.
Okay. Any questions from the board? Comments? Brian?
Yeah, the roof line. It's kind of long and swoopy. What was your thought of that?
I think it's just a function of the overall kind of composition of the mass in this particular instance, because we have that kind of courtyard in between, and then we have that one piece coming out which has sort of a shed roof back up against this kind of long gable, and it just felt appropriate to just kind of swoop that up to join the higher roof at a different slope for the low roof, and then it slopes up a little steeper for the high roof portion of it. So go back and look at the roof plan if you. It just felt like breaking it right there just really didn't feel right. Just kind of it's a more traditional response to the sort of Monterey massing.
Paul?
I'll happen to disagree mildly with the architect's design, and the only reason why this happens 3 times, because it's lot 2, 3, and 4, and so I'm thinking that maybe this design or this resolution shouldn't happen all 3 times. What I noticed on the section is that there is a leg that happens right here. So there's no reason why this can't be brought down 18 inches to 2 feet, which would then create like a little line here and break up this roof into 2 elements, one piece and then one piece. And I think for the eye, it would be more of an expected resolution. If you want to have one that has this for the design flair, that's fine. The other option is that you can always break this roof the opposite direction. So there's multiple solutions. If we go back to here, we can see that if this had a pitch this direction and dying back, and then this came across. So for resolution-wise, this seems very awkward, plus having this extra additional height, which shows up right here, is not resolved yet in my mind.
Just as so you understand the reason for it, again, looking at the traditional roof forms that we see typically, that when you have a long roof like that, you want to break the slopes. And in order to get that break in the slope here, we have to kind of raise that with a cripple wall. But, we can certainly take a look at, if we can get past having one of these in this modality, which, again, it's kind of a subjective thing. We feel happy with how it came out and how it relates to the other elements. But if you want us to take a look at breaking some of the others, or maybe the other two, I guess,
Yeah.
in some other way. You know, we can certainly drop that plane down so that there's a break there with some tailouts and whatnot.
Okay.
Can I follow? Well, I think
Sure.
that's what you have two houses here that look exactly the same. They both have that very large roof. So one of them should have a little more variety to it.
Sure. I think we can accommodate that.
Okay. Bernie?
Just in general, I'm feeling pretty uncomfortable about the way this is happening right now. We're an hour behind schedule, and I don't want to just ramrod this stuff here and look at it in 2 minutes. I mean, usually we take 15 or 20 minutes, and I don't see us really looking at these that quickly.
Bernie, there's a lot of consistency of style. I mean, they're all the same style. They're all effectively the same material, the same massing size-wise. And we kind of already looked at a site plan.
All we're doing is looking at the front and then moving on to the next.
Yeah, we're looking at all four sides. All four sides.
All right, I just want to make sure that...
No, it's important, I think, that we do look at every single one. And if you feel like we're moving too fast, we'll
Well, I feel like we're moving fast.
but we'll answer any questions you have.
I think you'll find, Mr. Chair, you'll find that there are, essentially four types that you're looking at that are, very similar to one another with some minor changes. So I think once you see the rest, it'll probably go more quickly as you see them.
I do have your garage doors.
Yes.
Could they be more like a carriage house door rather than just a big, make them a little more interesting?
We did give that quite a bit of thought, and we looked at that and kind of ended up going this direction, just a sort of George Washington Smith simplicity or something, but we
Precedent about that would be great.
Are all the garage doors the same, or just
yes,
sort of a plank
they're
design?
all the same.
Okay.
Yeah, and we had broken them up previously, but then we realized that access into these driveways and into the garages was problematic with that. It would have just created, that center plaster piece.
Not breaking them up into
They
two
look like they're
doors,
two
but just a
well,
different pattern or something.
Okay,
we can
look at
take
that,
a
yeah.
look and see if maybe there's a couple of different styles or something that are appropriate.
And when you get to colors, you may be able to distinguish them that way too. Some. I will follow up on Paul's comment. We can look at one of these designs to have this sort of break pitch, but it does give this a pretty good mass on that front side there. So.
Also, no lighting. I don't see any lighting.
Again, that's
We'll be
usually a
coming back.
final.
Oh, okay.
Final.
Yeah, I'll weigh in. I agree with Paul and you and Brian about that pitch. It's bothersome to me. I think it affects the mass bulk and scale of the helm to have that the way it is.
So, Paul, I just want to understand, are you saying we have three designs, if we look forward, that have this similar break pitch? And the suggestion is to have accept one of them and have some alternates on the other two?
Except, yes, correct, but I would make one change, that having a 10-foot plate and a 7-foot garage door isn't acceptable, and that leg that was added to create the break pitch should be studied further. And there should be a better resolution to that front elevation of the garage door.
So you don't like this design at all on any of the design?
The way it's drawn right now, I don't like the design,
Okay.
but they can go with this design with some alteration in one case, or maybe more than one, but right now having that basically a 10-foot plate and then going with the 4 and 12 roof pitch, creating that big heavy plaster part over the garage door, just seems a little awkward.
Okay.
I agree. I think dropping that.
Will give it a good feeling. You don't have the high plastered plate there, and I think it'll break it up nice across here.
Okay. So besides that,
Easy to do, I think.
besides that element, is there any other comments for the architecture?
I have one.
Brian?
Centered in the arch.
Mm-hmm.
That would probably look a little, because you have the window centered.
Is that the entry door?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, frankly, you never actually see
No.
it in that manner, but we'll see if we can align that a little better. Mr. Chair, just a response then to understand what we're saying. It sounds like you'd like to see that roof drop broken in all 3 of the units.
Well, at least that was the discussion. We haven't taken a vote on that or a straw vote on that, but at least 1, 2, 3, and I think I'm at 4, so the majority probably do feel that way.
You know, it shouldn't be lost if you like that design look. It's just that design look needs to be modified. You can put your ridge somewhere else in order to achieve your 5 and 12 to 4 and 12 because you lowered that thing at 18 inches. I mean, there's other solutions.
So just because I want to be as specific as possible, Mr. Chair, what I'm hearing is that we could, at least one of these units could have this long sloping roof if we can lower the cripple wall there somewhat. Does that make sense? Is that fair? Well, that's for maybe for the other units. I'm just saying one of them could have that.
I was giving the architect a little bit of flexibility because if he likes that design style, because he likes the design style, we shouldn't say he can't because it looks horrible. What makes it look awkward is the fact that there's this 18-inch plaster leg causing this wall at the garage door look taller. So there is a solution at hand that he can work on and coming up with something else if he would like to.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I think that can be done relatively painlessly and come back with something.
I think, is there any other general comments regarding the architecture on this lot 2? So I'd like to look for a motion on this one, and I'm interested to see what the motion will be.
Mr. Chair, I don't have a problem giving this project conceptual design approval with a big caveat that the architect is to redesign the roof over the garage and leave it at that. Project design approval for lot 2 with the caveat that the roof over the garage should be redesigned and not be more specific than that because that same statement can be made on all 3 lots that have this roof solution, and he's got a little flexibility to come up with something.
Did we make on the last motion continued to consent?
I would say this would need to be put back
full board. The last motion?
The last motion, no, that was not specified. I was going to
We're coming back for final in any event, right?
Correct.
Yeah, the last motion you just did, project design approval with NPO.
You made the last motion.
I did.
Denise and Brian.
So to return on consent?
Well,
For lot 1.
For lot 1.
Yes.
Right, okay.
Okay.
So for lot 2, I would say return back to full board for in progress.
I agree.
Just on that one issue? Just the roof issue?
Yes.
Yes.
Massing.
It's massing.
Fine.
Okay.
And I'll be able to make all these other findings.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay. Discussion? Bernie? Nothing? Okay. I think that's a pretty good motion. All those in favor? Say aye. Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries.
All righty. Okay, so that's...
Okay.
Floor plan, second floor plan, very similar except the deck on the front is smaller.
So the deck's on this side, which
Yeah.
looks like it's pretty far back from that side.
Yeah.
Okay. And this is the same. sort of-
Same roof condition.
This is a symmetrical plan than what we just saw?
Yes,
Okay. Can we get a motion?
with the exception of the front part of it here, a smaller, shorter deck.
Sure.
I would make the same motion that we did for lot 2, and then, not for the record, but there could be a way of rotating the roof pitch the opposite direction in one of these. I mean, there's more than one way to roof over the garage. I mean,
Fair enough.
but
We'll come back with something.
it's your choice.
Yeah, we'll come back.
So the motion, it's the same motion, coming back.
I have a question on this item.
Okay, under discussion, or?
Discussion, yes. How many are you supposed to stop the south elevation?
It's a good question. Well, there will be some wrought iron supports, traditional. Yes, yeah, it's missing from the plans, but yes.
So Paul, you first. Jim, did you second it, or was that the last item?
It's the last time.
Is it, we're looking for a second on the motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, Jim. Any more discussion? Okay, take a vote on the motion. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries unanimously. It's the same motion, because it's the same house, pretty much. So this is lot 4.
Do you want to look at it on the main plan again, just to get our bearings first? It's the end of the road here.
So again, the deck over here, similar to this, but reversed.
So I'll just move right to questions unless you want to present it.
No.
Okay, just want to look at the
Basically the
elevations
same,
quick.
But once again, with the Monterey style wood balcony above the plaster arches.
Okay. So questions to the applicant?
You ever thought of using colored tile anywhere?
You mean
glazed?
Yeah. Some kind of color enhancements.
Oh, you mean ornamental tile in various locations, maybe around a door or something like that, or we are actually thinking about some details like that, but again, we haven't quite gotten to that level of.
Got it. And on this one, right? Yeah.
Okay. It has to do on the south elevation as well as on the east elevation. There's like a little the roof over the bathroom area looks like it's a 3 and 12, and it's underneath the 5 and 12, which is the main body.
Right.
Can you do a 2-piece mission tile with I guess you can at 3 and 12.
Yeah.
It looks a little on the awkward side. The resolution where you didn't want the two to intersect or collide flashing wise.
Well, that's why that's part of the overall thinking and the design of the the roof here, that those two elements have to relate to one another. And obviously, if you drop this roof any further, you do end up with a little bit of a conflict there.
This is
I'm sorry.
Here,
okay.
and the way it reflects behind that chimney.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
This area
Yeah.
is, I mean, it's really minor, but looking at it from the one neighbor here, that's what I was just picking up on.
Paul, I missed some of your comment, but would the comment be to actually raise the pitch so it
If this raised up and then collided in
top.
here, it's more flashing and waterproofing liability. But I think the two marry up nicer.
Mm-hmm.
The other choice is to lower this. I don't remember what the room function is, but if this is 8.6, if this was 7.6, then you can bring it down a little bit more and get a little bit more of the roof pitch. It just seems awkward or odd.
So is there any other questions? Well, we'll move to comments. We're kind of in the comments. This sort of has that same play height issue. Even though it's not the same identical plan, it's the same roof
But
issue.
here it is broken. I mean,
Correct.
because you've got a hip roof on top.
Yeah, so this
and
this
then
part
it
isn't
drops
an
down.
issue. It's
Right.
just that looks a little strong. Yeah, and all I see is the problem is
Yeah,
that elevation
that's
right
where
there.
we have a conflict that we have to figure out how to resolve.
Just put a hip on that.
You could put a hip on that.
Yeah.
Speak on this
No,
one issue?
not speak, but I do have a question.
All right.
Not officially opening up public comment. The question is, when we look at a site plan, if we go to the site plan, what would be the fencing between lot 4 and the adjacent parcel? We're not on 5 yet, but we'll get there.
It's a 6-foot wood fence along that property line.
6-foot wood fence.
Excuse me.
I think that's what we said in the grading plan.
Set it on the other.
Yeah.
Any comments on this design?
The elevation.
Mr. Chair, yeah, this seems awfully awkward here to me. That little narrow
I think-
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like the whole thing could drop.
Yeah, there's a solution here. we
You
know.
better.
That, yeah, I agree with what you're saying, maybe changing this to a hip so that
So you
resolve
can
that
drop
issue.
that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So is there another model of this?
Is this a
Same or-
prototype?
Yeah.
This happens three
Yeah,
times.
that's correct.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can have the same motion where we said we'll come back
Sure.
to some resolution.
So I'm
of the
looking for a
issue with the roof.
motion.
Is for lot 2 and lot 3, but I would add the comment that what bedroom number is this? It doesn't. Can we just call it bedroom number 3? To study the roof over bedroom number 3.
Is this one right here?
It would be this roof and
This
how
is
this
that.
roof collides into that roof.
Yeah.
And revision of this, lowering that plate down and making that
Possibly
into a hip
ripping
to
that
turn
back.
that corner.
Yeah.
Okay. That was making NPO findings same of everything. Okay. Is there a second to that motion? Second. Under discussion, let's look at the site plan. Paul, are you comfortable with the idea of this deck and that house?
You're asking me point blank, and the answer is yes, because all of these are built together as a PUD, and when you buy into the complex, this is what you're getting. It's not one house in the midst of an existing neighborhood and the impacts that you have.
So you can make NPO findings for this house. Okay? Okay. Any other discussion on the motion? I'd like to vote on the motion. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Okay. We got quorum.
We only have 4 to go.
Yeah, I know. Okay, so lot number 5.
Lot number 5.
We're looking at it right here.
Did nobody said anything? So if we can go to lot 5. Okay.
So now we have decks on the backside too, correct?
It's over here, I think.
Yeah, exactly. That's where primarily it's different is on the second level, because now you have the deck facing to the south. And you have a low roof, much lower roof here, facing north into the walk street. So that's what you're looking at there.
Okay, so we have a taller elevation, but it's a deck up there.
And this is where the school district was concerned about having a solid balcony there rather than, wrought iron or something. That was one of the things we agreed to, I think, when we were at concept review for this.
Okay. Does this property adjoin the neighbors with the same 6-foot wet wood fence?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a little bit of a retaining wall and then a wood fence.
It continues around.
Okay. Questions to the applicant? Comments?
Yes, I have a question.
Brian?
The 3 pipe vents you have in here, what is that?
Sorry, where are we looking? Oh,
Oh,
those are
those.
just,
I'm sorry.
these? That's just a traditional ornamental clay tile kind
They
of
are
stuck
gonna
into the end. We may actually even use it as an actual vent behind that for the attic.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Okay, so I have from Michelle here this piece about the school, because now we're up against the school on that side, right?
Mhm.
So they would like us to consider the location and design of decks, balconies, patios, large windows, and similar features, including ventilation features, facing the school facilities and outdoor play areas, and consider the potential for exposure to noise associated with the adjacent elementary school.
I think we covered all those issues at the last meeting, and we agreed to do what we've done here, and they've seen that, and I'm not aware of any additional problems.
Okay.
At our last meeting?
When we were here for conceptual review, and the school district representatives and the parent association representatives were here and spoke.
No, the date on this is today.
Well, that's their
Right.
email.
It's just the email, yeah. Okay.
And they're just reminding you that
Right.
And when she wrote that email, she had not seen the plans.
Okay, okay, so she's satisfied at this point then?
That's what she shared with me.
Okay.
But she'll have an opportunity to come back when final is granted if she has any questions about it. But basically, most of the concern now more or less has to do with the materials that are used during
Materials.
construction to reduce noise.
Right.
Since we addressed the design issues with respect to the makeup of the balcony.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great.
Questions to the applicant? And no questions, move to comments. Architecture?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a comment about the school district letter in the sense that Planning Commission reviewed this whole project too, and they would have hashed and rehashed those solutions as well with the outdoor living space, so it's not an issue from how I see it.
All right.
In the architecture, any comments?
Mr. Chair, this west elevation is an interesting one. I'm trying to get my bearings on it, but sort of a big old blank wall here.
Well, remember, this is up against the property line with a fence, a 6-foot fence between the two. But also, it's very much, the traditional kind of George Washington Smith, if you will, massing, where you have large areas of negative space. It's just part of the overall kind of characteristics of the architectural style.
An opportunity for landscape.
And there will be landscaping there also. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, at first it seemed a little awkward to me, but now I understand.
Any additional questions? If no questions, I'm going to look for a motion.
Make a motion to approve the plans as submitted. To approve the plans that are submitted and that they, on lot 5, and that they, the NPO findings are satisfied.
Project design approval, you're saying?
For project design approval.
Would this be final on
So
Yes,
we'll talk about
final on consent.
that. Okay. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
Second. Discussion?
I
None
don't
on
think
this
so.
motion so far. Under discussion, question, this window here seems to be one of the only windows I've seen that didn't have breakups in it. The traditional mutton patterns. And it just seems a little awkward to not see them on one window.
We'll work
Yes.
it out. Yeah. That's the north elevation, lot 5.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the whole property should be consistent with that pattern.
Sure, that may have been an oversight, I'm not sure.
Okay. Any other discussion on the motion? Okay, we'll take a vote. All those in favor of the motion? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. And Michelle, we have to announce a 10-day appeal period on any of the approved motions.
Okay, wait, let me just get back here now. We're going to flip this way. Lot 6.
And again, there's a balcony on the southerly side facing towards the ocean, similar to this.
They all.
Yeah, they're almost the same except for lot 8.
There's the balcony. There's a so that's a solid rail. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Effectively, this is a mirror image of what we just saw.
Except the balcony's a little bit bigger.
Question?
Yeah, the garage door openings, you all have them as an elliptical segmented arch.
Mm-hmm.
There's no thought of maybe making one
Some
squared
variations.
or even softening the radius a little bit, so it's a little more traditional.
One of the problems with a 7-foot door when you do these radius corners, well, there's actually very specific code requirements about how high and how far out and all that, and that's why. We would actually like to do it more like that, but in fact, what we show there, it complies with those requirements, you know, of a certain height and a certain distance away from the
You might
edge.
could look at a straight and then maybe just a little corbel at the
Yeah.
at the end that doesn't go any lower than
Yeah.
that, just as a variation.
I think that's a fair statement.
Okay.
It's a 7-foot garage door versus an 8-foot garage door?
That's what was discussed right there.
Because in some places where we have the tall masonry wall of the exterior deck, the garage door could get a little taller, which then gives you more room to have the curve for the elliptical radius.
I'm pretty sure the
I mean,
developer probably
it's
doesn't want to
possible.
do that.
It's possible. I think some variation in the door, if we could get it, would be great.
Yeah, we'll look at that.
Okay. Any other comments on the architecture? Okay. Who made the last motion? Okay, Brian. This is almost the same house.
I make a motion to pass lot number
6.
With project design approval with MPO findings that are satisfied, with the caveat of, what was it, looking at possible alternative garage door opening design.
Okay. Second? Aaron, discussion?
Is that going to be final on consent?
I
The
propose
same
it's
as last
final on
time, yeah.
consent, yeah. I don't
Okay.
see-
Any more discussion? I'll take a vote on it. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstains? Motion carries. And there's a 10-day appeal period on that. So we'll go to... Just a second. One too many.
Lot 7.
Is it lot 7 right here?
Okay, so now we have another.
It is. Sure.
Here again, maybe a different corbel design.
Yeah.
Just for interest, and also maybe you could change the corbel end of your wood
Mm-hmm.
trellis to something a little different.
Okay.
Just keep going.
Yeah, this is almost identical to
It's
the last,
identical, yeah, other than
exactly the last
The
one.
roof design is a little different here.
So it's just a,
I think this one is the hip roof and
and the same issue here.
that.
Do we have that on the last one?
No.
Okay. Questions, the applicant? Comments? Paul, are there any comments on this little hip piece over here? It's a similar issue. It's a little bit shallower pitch. Lose sleep on that one?
No. It didn't seem as awkward as the other one for some reason.
This is already a drop pitch, a drop plate.
Maybe that's what the deal is, because this pitch here is more 4 and 12 like, and the other one was really flat. So maybe the other one was a wider.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was a wider
Which
piece.
why it is a flatter pitch, and so it was the flatness of the pitch that got concerned looking at it.
Okay. Any comments for the architecture? Okay. So I'm looking to a motion for approval if there are no comments. Anyone willing to make a
I'll make that motion for project design approval as submitted.
NPO findings?
Yes.
Final on consent?
Yeah.
Final on consent.
Final on consent for lot 7.
There's no additional comments?
Comments about
Is there
changing the corbel designs.
Oh, right.
Variety of corbel designs on plaster and on the wood trellis.
Did we get a second to that motion? Brian?
I second that motion.
Okay. Okay, so any additional comments to the motion? Not hearing any, I'll take a vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? So the motion carries. 10-day appeal period.
Okay, now lot 8,
Lot 8,
S1, on the street.
and this is actually kind of this visual from the street.
And then there is a color elevation too somewhere. Wasn't that one? Oh, shoot. Well, there's, no. I thought there was a colored elevation right at the beginning of. Oh. There we go. These are the two houses.
Yeah.
This is the other one. Let's see how it's.
So this is the one under consideration.
Mm-hmm.
So deck's in this corner. Any questions of the architecture? Comments?
I'll make a comment that it's a positive design. The design looks great. All 8 houses, as much as we commented on a few of the roof pitches, but overall, the entire package, you can see that there's a common thread through it all, and it's going to be a nice addition to the city.
I think it's well detailed, and the massing and the scale and everything's looking good.
The breakups that happen is not 1 or 2 boxes, but there's not too many busyness things, but there is some breakups that happen that make it fun and interesting and create shadow play.
Okay.
I have a question. The wrought iron, are you planning on doing any kind of hand wrought iron? Or is it just straight? Or you haven't thought about it?
Well, we just haven't quite come to the final details on that yet. But yeah, I think it would be nice to have a little bit of, maybe some twist,
Yeah.
or something there. Yeah.
Interesting.
Exactly.
Mr. Chair, if I may, this is my favorite one, actually. I like this house. How much will it be? Same thing. Only in my dreams. But anyway, yeah, this one I think is really well balanced and nicely proportioned.
That's a good comment. A motion
Motion. I'll make a motion
for
for
Lot 8. Lot 8,
Lot 8's design approval.
project design approval.
Project design approval. For Lot 8 project, I make the motion for project design approval, finding the NPO findings of mass bulk and scale, quality of materials, and to give it approval with final on consent.
Okay. Second to that motion? Second, Aaron. Discussion? I'm just going to make a discussion on this one. It might have pertain to all of them. The landscaping.
Well, that, we need to.
We still have more. Look at that.
We still have to do that, and then.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would caveat to each of those motions that landscaping will review for final.
Okay.
But we want to make sure you're at least.
Finish your
by-
motion on that.
Yeah.
I think we didn't vote on that.
Correct.
Oh, please.
So correct. So any more discussion on Lot 8? All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? So the motion carries unanimously, and there's a 10-day appeal period. And then a general comment, I guess, on the landscaping, that the final landscaping still is going to have to be reviewed prior to any final approval on any of the buildings. Be done at consent.
May I make a comment? Mr. Black made a comment when we started, and what he asked was that on this final and consent with the landscape, how much detail is he going to need to go into in the back, these private yards, when in fact the new homeowners are going to be dictating quite a lot of that. So maybe we can give him some direction on just how far he has to take that.
Well, I was actually thinking we would have something stipulated in the CCRs where you'd have a list requirement of types of landscaping they would have.
Plants or something like that.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if I might just make a comment, I think that the applicant should be working very closely with Allison DeBusk, their case planner, but then also that we've had discussions in the past that we don't want the rear yards for each individual unit to be completely devoid of anything, because there is the opportunity that owners might not be able to afford doing anything after they purchase these houses. So there should be some level of landscaping for each individual lot for the private yards.
So perhaps then, if I may, definitely trees might be designated for sure.
I think from earlier comments, I know the board was interested in the disposition of the backyard trees and how they would be integrated with the rest of the common area design. So, I mean, I think the suggestion of the developer planting the trees as shown on our plan, I think would go a long way to sort of meeting that need, and then, while at the same time providing sort of maximum flexibility for an individual homeowner in terms of how he wants to lay it out, lawn, no lawn, patio, what have you. So I think that's, I mean, from a practical perspective, I think that's a good approach, if you would agree with that. But
I want to add on lot 4 and 5 that this area right here, adjacent to the property line, whether it's in a private yard or in part of the common, we should fully develop that.
yeah, that's understood.
Okay.
That's understood.
I guess one of the things that I'm concerned with too is that besides just the trees, I'm thinking, because there are those people who would just sit there with dirt and trees and be happy with it. But perhaps, some of the foundation plantings, some of the larger shrubs and all that too should be designated. I don't know. It's kind of hard to call. But I don't know that I'd leave that up to individuals.
I think you could, if you wanted to propose turf as you have on this plan, with shrub areas and a plant list with spacings, that'd be fine. Or
Well, I know we'll probably be developing a plant palette for the
Yeah,
CCNRs.
there you go.
So I think that's a prudent approach. And, we could, well, I suppose the developer could lay out lawn and provide lawn areas, but the homeowner may say, well, I want to take a more sustainable approach on landscape, and we don't want lawn. And but then he has the option to remove it, I guess.
Well, perhaps just a choice between lawn patio like that, or just sort of percentages of.
Yeah, patio's a personal thing in terms of how much you really want to have and how much you need.
maybe you just don't do any lawn and just do widely spaced, really minimal plantings.
Well, I mean, you could have
hydras.
a minimum number of shrubs. I know when I was growing up, when you bought a house in the subdivision, they give you 3 trees, 5 shrubs, and some seeded lawn, and that was pretty much it. And then, then we did our own. So I don't know. We have heard that, some early comments from Jaime, I know, said, it's kind of up to the board to sort of give us some direction in terms of where you want to go with it. I mean, obviously, I know the developer doesn't want to spend a lot of money on something that's going to get torn out because an individual homeowner, it's not his taste. So, we want to be practical about all this. At the same time, with the intention of having a good product at the end that everybody can be proud of.
Sure, because the architecture is so beautiful that it would be just criminal, but perhaps then, as we were saying, then just for each lot, like a shrub list, minimum shrub list, ground cover list, something to guide the people, and minimum quantities of that at least gives you some.
Yeah, that's practical, I suppose. I would hope that anybody who, spent what these houses will probably end up costing, that they would go out and hire a professional and give them some help. But
One would.
But Yeah, exactly. But, so, can you summarize that for us, please?
Mr. Chair, let me just add as well as a reminder to the applicants and to the board that they'd also need to observe the required landscaping compliance. So whatever you do in the private yard, total landscaped area has to be 80% drought tolerant, so you couldn't just landscape the whole thing with turf.
No.
Right.
Absolutely.
So that would be good in the CCNRs, obviously, is that
Oh,
that-
yeah.
those kind of rules, like, and that'll guide them too, to what they can do and what they can't.
I'm going to appoint Aaron to kind of put that together as far as the points.
Okay, I think we have, one option is do some typical plans. Like you could, I know we have these lots, these floor plans are really similar, so why couldn't the same landscape plan apply to the same footprint? And then we'd have one plan for 4 lots, and that would be an option. The other option would be you have a plant list and quantities and lawn areas and trees shown.
So that's an option.
Yeah, those would be 2
I
options.
think it'd be important to actually show the trees. Be
Oh,
obligated
yeah,
to
the
plant the
sheet,
trees.
exactly.
Because then we have control over making that part of the overall design.
But it seems like your second option
Is there another option,
makes
or
it
is that
pretty clear,
It's in terms of plant palette, or
Yeah, just that, I guess it doesn't really matter, because if you have one that's an example.
I think, yeah, typical, you could change the shrubs from lot to lot or something, but we have at least one or 2 typicals.
Quantity and size.
Well, I know I did a project one time where we just provided a master plant list from which the homeowners could choose and create their own designs, and there was issues around not having trees on that list that would exceed a certain height, so we were very selective in terms of the species that were chosen, and then they wouldn't do anything crazy, because they'd have to pretty much adhere to this list more or less. And it was a generous list, but it was one that we selected, so I think can be a prudent approach too. And then with the caveat that nobody can have a lawn exceeding 20% of the total landscape area, that sort of thing. I mean, and then as far as the hardscape, well, that's really up to the individual homeowner, I'm guessing. So.
But that sounds like the most viable thing to do. Is
In addition to, we would design and plant individual trees.
Do we have enough comments that?
What's that? I'm not sure I'm clear on exactly what.
Yeah, what I was going to suggest, Mr. Chair, is if we just kind of make one additional motion to give general guidance for the private outdoor living spaces for each unit, and then that can kind of be a caveat to each motion that was made for the lots, for the architecture. So one motion.
one motion for that.
For the landscape?
Yeah. Okay. Go, Aaron. I know,
It
but I
is.
think you can't, I don't know how far you can take it.
Well, I was thinking.
Plan for each lot, right? As part of the package.
We will, but the question is, what's on that plan and what level of detail? My
want trees.
suggestion is to have a plan that shows specifically trees on each of the backyards with individual species and what have you. So each lot would be committed to having that, and then with a master plant list palette from which any and all of the property owners would have to select to develop their own. Short of, I mean, and that they could have lawn if they choose to, but it can't exceed. I mean, there'd be basically restrictions on it. But it's kind of a CCNR. But the question is, what are we obligated to show you that'll make you satisfied on the final plans?
What I got was a prepared plant list with the requirement that there be no more than, like you give the new owner a prepared plant list of what they can choose from, with the requirement that their lawn would be no more than 20% of that landscape.
Yeah, that's a
area.
city code. So.
But then I'm thinking all major trees that grow taller than 8 foot would be already planted by the.
That's right.
By the developer.
That's right.
And then a list to choose from for
Yes.
the other items.
Yeah.
And minimum quantities per lot.
Well, then that's a question. Yeah.
That's tough, though. What if they can't afford like that?
Well, we can make it so it's manageable. I mean, we're not saying we could do that, but then that would be more. That would be a description in the specs rather than actually what's shown on the plan. Necessarily, if you follow me.
Yeah. In other words.
We're not drawing every. If we say you need to provide 100 shrubs, we're not going to be drawing 100 shrubs on there, basically, that's the requirement.
Right, I see it as a 10-scale plan of Lot 4, for example, and you show the trees on the plan, and you say, we're going to do, 30 daylilies and
Yeah,
5.
but that's the whole thing. If he doesn't like daylilies, then why should he have to do that? What he should have is a list and say, that he could take to somebody, a gardener or a designer or something, and say, okay,
right,
create a garden for me.
30 of this list, of these perennials from this.
If that's a consensus on the board, that, I don't know, that seems kind of restrictive to me.
I think that's too restrictive. I really do. I think the best you can do in a situation like this is provide the list with exactly what Brian said here, and have in categories shrubs, and they have certain, not a gigano list, Don't give them too many choices, but a certain list that is going to fall into our drought tolerant guidelines. And
but you don't think we need a minimum number of plants per lot? So you're saying they could have 3 shrubs?
Well, they're going to probably be hiring a professional, hopefully, to do that, right?
No, we have to. There's no guarantee of that.
Okay, but I don't know how you can judge that, though. How can we say that?
Well, you have to gamble that someone will come in and put white gravel everywhere because they don't like landscaping.
That's right.
Well, I mean, we have an excellent landscape architect, and he knows kind of what would be appropriate shrub-wise to make this thing feel adequate for the space. And I think that's the best we can do at the moment is see his proposal, and it's got to have some sort of quantities on there.
So David would make the recommendation.
Well, I'm just saying, it would be him doing the proposal, and but there should be some sort of quantity for each lot.
Yeah.
A minimum quantity.
Correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm sure there's a happy medium there in terms of the quantity. So, whether a homeowner decides, really like more, fine, you can have more.
So we're not dictating the quantity. We just want a quantity. We're going to review it to see if it's adequate.
Okay.
There we go.
That sounds.
I expect it'll be minimal, but
that sounds reasonable.
If it's,
that's a good
we're good.
Yeah.
We're good with that.
It's going to be to your benefit to put an adequate number there so that if somebody can't afford anything, they're just going to have to put that much into it.
Okay.
So,
Or they can't live there.
so is that
I think if the applicants understand that direction, I think that's suffice. I don't think you need to then
So
create
that would be the
detailed.
responsibility of the homeowner.
do we have to make a motion on that?
No, that's what I was just saying. I think that if the applicants understand that direction, then they can come back with
That's
what
fine.
they feel is appropriate for the final landscaping review for each individual lot.
And then, as I remember too, just getting back to the palm trees, then the consensus was for the board to reduce the number. Yeah, see, so I'm just looking at this plan. See, does that seem like too many palms to you? That's pretty much.
From here. I can tell
Anyway.
from here that there's not that many, but.
So Michelle, are we done?
Wow.
It's a marathon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and members, for kind
Thank you for a beautiful
hanging in there with
presentation.
us.
Thank you. So the final landscape plan will come back on consent as well? For approval? Is that what's been?
Yes.
With each lot?
Yes.
Just
With
to
each lot?
clarify what we're doing. Oh,
Well, there's a common area. We come back on consent.
Common area will come back for the final on the subdivision plan, under the
Okay.
and then each private lot will come back as its own.
so, I'm sorry,
So we will have individual plans for each lot? Is that how it is? Okay, all right.
okay, so just to clarify, I'm clear about it. There are 3 lots for which we're going to come back to look at the roof to the full board.
Correct.
And that will be, we'd like to be continued to 2 weeks from now to do that.
Okay.
I think
Just get that.
I think they continued, you indefinitely, right now I have to look, I don't know if I have room, I have a really busy.
Well, it's critical for us to be able to keep the project going, so we really want to get.
I need to,
Just
the
has to
board
fit
wants to
into
make
the
the
schedule.
motion that way, and at this point I have to look at the,
Uh-oh.
and I have like 5
Can we-
new notices they have to do, there's a certain number of copies, but I think 3 might be able to squeeze on there.
Well, you wouldn't have to renotice it if you
No, I'm
continue it,
saying
right? Yeah.
new projects that have already been submitted for the next agenda, that make, that are making big. Yes.
Did we mess you up?
So you can just let us know, Michelle.